Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto unlocked the supreme Rasengan Bloodline? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening the Spiral. The pale light of dawn crept across Konoha as Naruto Uzumaki leapt from rooftop to rooftop, his orange and black jacket fluttering behind him like a banner. The village was still quiet, most of its inhabitants enjoying the last peaceful moments of sleep before the day began. Not Naruto. He'd been awake for hours, driven by a restlessness he couldn't explain. 3 years of training with Jiraiya had changed him. He was taller, stronger, and, though few would believe it, occasionally quieter. But the feeling that had awakened him this morning was new, a strange humming beneath his skin, like his chakra was singing to him. Naruto landed on the Hokage monument, settling on the stone head of the fourth Hokage. Below him, Konoha spread out in a tapestry of buildings and streets just beginning to stir with life. Something's coming, he murmured to the wind. Something big. Talking to yourself again, a familiar voice called from behind. Naruto turned to see Kakashi perched on a nearby outcropping. His visible eye curved in what passed for a smile beneath his mask. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto grinned, the momentary melancholy forgotten. What are you doing up here so early? I could ask you the same thing. Kakashi closed his book and tucked it away. The Hokage wants to see us. New mission. Naruto's eyes lit up. Really? What kind of mission? Is Sakura coming too? Is it dangerous? Will we? Yes. You'll find out. Yes. And probably. Kakashi stood, stretching lazily. Let's not keep Lady Tsunade waiting. As they made their way to the Hokage Tower, the village came alive around them. Shopkeepers raised their shutters, children raced toward the academy, and ninjas of all ranks moved purposefully through the streets. Naruto breathed it all in, savoring the familiar energy of his home. The strange sensation beneath his skin pulsed again, stronger this time. He flexed his fingers, wondering why his chakra felt so impatient. The Hokage's office was bathed in morning light when they arrived. Tsunade sat behind her desk, hands steepled before her face, while Shizune stood nearby clutching a stack of scrolls. Sakura was already there, examining a map spread across a side table. You're late, Tsunade said, though her tone lacked its usual edge. Actually, we're right on time, Kakashi replied mildly. For once, Naruto bounced on his toes. So what's the mission, Granny Tsunade? Something awesome, right? Tsunade's eye twitched at the nickname, but she let it pass. We've received troubling reports from a village near the border with the land of whirlpools. At the mention of whirlpool, Naruto felt the humming beneath his skin intensify. A coincidence, surely. What kind of reports? Sakura asked, looking up from her map. Disappearances. Strange chakra phenomena. The villagers claimed to have seen spirits walking at night. Tsunade slid a scroll across her desk. Most concerning are reports of a man collecting blood samples from the locals, particularly those with red hair. Red hair? Naruto asked, suddenly paying closer attention. Like the Uzumaki clan. A heavy silence fell over the room. Naruto rarely brought up his clan heritage, partly because he knew so little about it. Possibly, Tsunade said carefully. After the fall of Uzushiogakure, the survivors scattered. Some may have settled in border villages. So someone's hunting Uzumaki descendants. Kakashi took the scroll, scanning its contents quickly. That's what we need you to find out. Tsunade looked directly at Naruto. This could be nothing. Superstitious villagers and coincidence. Or it could be someone with a dangerous interest in bloodline abilities. The humming under Naruto's skin became a steady pulse. When do we leave? Immediately. Pack for at least 2 weeks. Tsunade nodded to Shizune, who handed each of them a smaller scroll. These contain the details we have. The village is called Nagale. It's small, primarily farmers and fishermen. Who's leading the mission? Sakura asked. Kakashi. But you'll be joined by one more. Tsunade glanced at the door just as a soft knock sounded. It slid open to reveal Hinata Hyuga, her pale eyes meeting Naruto's briefly before darting away. I'm sorry if I'm late, Lady Hokage. Perfect timing, Tsunade said. Hinata's Byakugan will be essential if there are indeed chakra anomalies to investigate. Naruto grinned broadly at Hinata. Awesome. Team Kakashi plus Hinata. We'll solve this in no time. Hinata's cheeks colored slightly as she nodded. I'll do my best. As they left the Hokage Tower to prepare, Naruto felt the strange chakra pulse synchronize with his heartbeat. Whatever was happening near the land of whirlpools, his body seemed to know it was important. The journey to Nagale took 3 days of steady travel. They kept a brisk pace, moving through the forests of the Fire Country before the landscape gradually changed to rolling coastal hills. The air grew heavy with salt as they approached the border, and on the morning of the 3rd day, they caught their first glimpse of the sea, a brilliant blue expanse stretching to the horizon. We're close now, Kakashi said, consulting a map as they paused on a hillside. Nagale is in that valley, where the river meets the ocean. From their vantage point, they could see a cluster of buildings nestled where a wide river emptied into a sheltered bay. Fishing boats dotted the water, and terraced fields climbed the surrounding hillsides. It looks normal, Sakura observed. The most dangerous situations often do, Kakashi replied, rolling up his map. We'll approach as travelers seeking supplies. Keep your eyes open, but don't act like we're expecting trouble. As they descended toward the village, Naruto felt the strange sensation in his chakra intensify. By the time they reached the outskirts of Nagale, it had become almost uncomfortable, a pressure building inside him like a spring wound too tight. Naruto, are you okay? Hinata asked quietly, walking beside him. Your chakra seems disturbed. He blinked in surprise. You can see that, she nodded. It's flowing differently than usual. More spiral patterns than I normally observe. I've been feeling weird since we got the mission, he admitted. Like my chakra's trying to tell me something. Perhaps it is, Hinata said thoughtfully. The Uzumaki were known for their special chakra. Maybe being near the land of whirlpools is affecting you somehow. Naruto considered this as they entered the village proper. Nagale was indeed small, just a few dozen buildings arranged along the riverbank and bay. Despite the picturesque setting, there was an unmistakable tension in the air. Villagers eyed them warily, conversations falling silent as they passed. Not the friendliest place, is it? Sakura murmured. They're afraid, Hinata said, her Byakugan activating briefly. Many of them have elevated heart rates and stress responses just from seeing strangers. Kakashi led them to what appeared to be the village's only inn, a 2-story wooden building overlooking the bay. A weathered sign depicting a leaping fish hung above the door. Inside, the common room was nearly empty despite the approaching evening hour. An elderly man stood behind the counter, his hands nervously polishing an already gleaming glass. Welcome, travelers, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. What brings you to our humble village? Just passing through, Kakashi replied easily. We need rooms for a few nights and a hot meal, if possible. Of course, of course. The innkeeper set down his glass. 2 rooms enough, one for the ladies and one for you gentlemen. That would be fine. As Kakashi handled the arrangements, Naruto wandered to a window overlooking the bay. The Fishin' boats were returning with the evening tide, their crews working with practiced efficiency to unload the day's catch. Nothing seemed amiss, and yet, something's wrong here, he said quietly when Sakura joined him. Can't you feel it? Sakura frowned. The villagers are definitely on edge. But I don't sense anything specific. I do. Naruto pressed a hand to his stomach, where the seal contained. The 9 tails lay beneath his clothes. It's like the air is charged before a lightning storm. Before Sakura could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and running feet drew their attention to the main street, where villagers were pointing toward the hills beyond the terraced fields. What's happening? Kakashi asked the innkeeper, who had gone pale. The lights, the old man whispered. They've started early tonight. The 4 ninjas exchanged glances before hurrying outside. The sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. But it wasn't the sunset that had captured the villagers' attention. Above the highest terraced field, where the cultivated land gave way to wild forest, balls of blue-white light danced among the trees. They moved with purpose, weaving between trunks and sometimes seeming to chase one another. What are those? Sakura breathed. The spirit lights, a woman standing nearby answered, clutching a young child to her skirts. They started appearing a month ago. Always at night, always in the same place. And the next morning, someone else would be gone. Gone? Kakashi asked. What do you mean? The woman looked at him with haunted eyes. Disappeared. From their beds, from their boats. No sign of struggle, no trace of where they went. Just gone. Hinata had activated her Byakugan, staring intently at the distant lights. They're chakra manifestations, she said quietly. But unlike any I've seen before. They seem to be searching for something. The pressure in Naruto's chest suddenly spiked, and he doubled over with a gasp. Naruto. Sakura was at his side instantly, her medical training kicking in. What's wrong? I don't know, he managed through gritted teeth. My chakra. It's reacting to those lights. As if in response to his words, the distant lights froze in their movements. Then, as one, they turned and began floating down the hillside, directly toward the village. Everyone, get inside, Kakashi ordered the gathering crowd. Seal your doors and windows. Panic spread through the villagers as they scrambled to obey. Mothers scooped up children, old men hobbled as quickly as they could toward shelter, and in moments. The street was empty save for the four ninjas. What's the plan, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked, helping Naruto stand upright. We observe first, Kakashi replied, pushing up his headband to reveal his Sharingan eye. We need to understand what these lights are before we engage. The balls of light continued their inexorable approach, moving faster now. As they drew closer, Naruto could see that each one contained a swirling pattern, like a miniature whirlpool of chakra. They're spirals, he murmured, the pressure in his chest both painful and somehow exhilarating. Just like the Uzumaki crest, Kakashi finished, his mismatched eyes narrowing. And your Rasengan. The lights reached the edge of the village and paused, hovering like curious animals. There were perhaps 24 of them, each the size of a human head, pulsing with an internal rhythm that Naruto realized matched the feeling in his own chakra. Suddenly, one light broke from the group and shot directly toward Naruto. Kakashi moved to intercept it, hands flashing through signs for a defensive jutsu, but Naruto held up a hand. Wait, he said, instinct overriding caution. I think it wants to communicate. The light slowed as it approached, coming to hover an arm's length from Naruto's face. Up close, he could see that the spiral pattern was incredibly complex, layers upon layers of chakra threads woven together in a pattern that seemed almost familiar. Without thinking, Naruto reached out his hand. Naruto, don't, Sakura cried, but it was too late. His fingers touched the light, and the world exploded into brilliant white. Naruto found himself standing in a vast, empty space. No, not empty. Water stretched in all directions, ankle-deep and perfectly still, reflecting a featureless white sky. It was similar to his mindscape where he communicated with the Nine Tails, but different. Calmer, older somehow. Hello. His voice created no echo. Descendant. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, neither male nor female, young nor old. Who are you? Naruto turned in a circle, searching for the source. Where am I? We are memory. You are at the nexus. The water at Naruto's feet began to move, forming tiny whirlpools that grew and connected, creating intricate spiral patterns across the endless surface. Memory. Memory of what? Of Uzushio. Of the spiral. Of what was lost. A figure began to form before him, composed entirely of swirling water, humanoid but without distinct features. The blood remembers what the mind forgets, the figure said, its voice clearer now. You carry the spiral within you, descendant, though you know it not. You mean the Uzumaki clan? Naruto asked. I know I'm part of it, but more than part. You are its legacy, its last hope. The watery figure extended a hand, and in its palm formed a perfect sphere of swirling chakra, a Rasengan, but with patterns Naruto had never seen before. The technique you know is but a shadow of its true form. The fourth Hokage recreated what he could not truly understand. But you have the blood. The spiral is your birthright. Naruto stared at the Rasengan in the figure's hand. Unlike his own technique, this version contained multiple layers of rotation, each moving independently yet in perfect harmony with the others. I don't understand, he said. What are you trying to tell me? The hunter comes. He seeks what flows in your veins. What flows in the veins of all who carry the spiral? The figure's hand closed, the Rasengan disappearing. We cannot stop him, but we can prepare you. Prepare me how? For what? For awakening. The figure dissolved into thousands of tiny lights, identical to those that had appeared above the village. They swirled around Naruto in a dizzying dance. The blood remembers, the voice said, now fading. When the time comes, look to the shrine beneath the whirlpool. The key is in the spiral. Always in the spiral. The lights converged on Naruto all at once, and he felt them sink into his skin, into his very chakra network. Pain blossomed throughout his body, but with it came a strange sense of rightness, as if pieces of himself he hadn't known were missing were suddenly sliding into place. Wait, he called out. I still don't understand. But the white world was already dissolving around him. Naruto. Naruto. Wake up. He opened his eyes to find Sakura leaning over him, her face tight with concern. He was lying in the middle of the village street, the cool evening air brushing his face. What happened? He managed, his throat oddly dry. You touched that light and collapsed, Kakashi said from nearby. You've been unconscious for almost 5 minutes. Naruto sat up slowly, surprised to find the painful pressure in his chest was gone. In its place was a warm, steady pulse, like a second heartbeat. The lights, he asked. Gone, Hinata said softly. The moment you touched that one, they all vanished. Just blinked out of existence. Naruto looked down at his hands, half expecting them to look different somehow. They appeared the same as always, and yet he could feel that something had changed deep within him. I saw someone, or something. He tried to organize his scattered thoughts. It talked about Uzushio and the spiral being my birthright. About someone hunting people with Uzumaki blood. Kakashi and Sakura exchanged concerned glances. It could have been a genjutsu, Sakura suggested. A trap set to capture anyone investigating the disappearances. No. Naruto shook his head firmly. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to warn me. To prepare me. For what? Kakashi asked. Before Naruto could answer, a scream cut through the evening air, coming from the far side of the village. They were on their feet instantly, racing toward the sound. They rounded a corner to find a young woman backing away from a man standing at the edge of the tree line. Even in the fading light, they could see that the man was tall and slender, dressed in a gray cloak that seemed to shimmer like disturbed water. His face was obscured by a mask decorated with a black spiral pattern. Found you, the masked man said, his voice carrying easily across the distance. Another descendant of Uzushio. How fortunate. The woman stumbled backward. Stay away from me. Your fear is unnecessary, the man said, taking a step forward. I only require a small sample. The process is quite painless. That's far enough, Kakashi called out, stepping into view with the others close behind. Identify yourself. The masked man tilted his head, regarding them with apparent curiosity. Interesting. Konoha Shinobi. I didn't expect the leaf to take an interest in my work so soon. Your work? Sakura demanded. You mean kidnapping innocent villagers? Harvesting necessary samples, the man corrected. Though sometimes more extensive study is required. Naruto felt a cold anger rising within him. What have you done with the people you've taken? The masked man's attention shifted to Naruto, and even without seeing his face, they could feel his sudden intense interest. Fascinating, he said, his voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper. You're not just a descendant. You're pure-blooded, an Uzumaki through and through. The warm pulse in Naruto's chest flared hot. How do you know that? Who are you? The man gave a slight bow. Kazama Shiryu, last survivor of the Kazama clan. We were neighbors to your ancestors, boy. Before the fall. If you're from near Uzushio, Kakashi said. Then you're a long way from home. Home is gone. Destroyed. Like Uzushio itself. Kazama straightened. But its legacy remains. In the blood of survivors. In their descendants. In him. He pointed directly at Naruto. Hinata moved slightly closer to Naruto, her Byakugan activated and focused on Kazama. His chakra is strange, she whispered. It flows in reverse spirals. Naruto didn't realized he'd been unconsciously gathering chakra until he felt it swirling in his palm, the beginnings of a Rasengan forming without any shadow clone to help shape it. The sensation was different than before. the energy moving more easily, more naturally. Kazama noticed the gathering chakra and laughed softly. So it begins. Sooner than I expected, but all the better. What begins? Naruto demanded. What do you want from these people? From me. Want. I want what was stolen from our clans centuries ago. Kazama raised his hands, and chakra began to swirl around them, not blue like Naruto's, but a deep crimson. The Uzumaki were not the only clan with spiral chakra, boy. But they were the only ones to fully unlock its potential. He formed a hand sign Naruto had never seen before, thing. Ers interlaced and then twisted in an impossible configuration. Blood spiral technique. Crimson extraction. The red chakra shot forward like a striking snake, aiming directly for the young woman who still stood frozen in fear. Kakashi moved to intercept, his hands forming signs for a counter technique, but he wouldn't reach her in time. Something surged within Naruto, instinct, memory, blood, and he thrust his half-formed Rasengan forward. Instead of dissipating as it left his hand, the swirling blue chakra stretched and expanded, shooting across the distance to meet Kazama's attack. The two spiral techniques collided with a sound like a thunderclap. The air between them distorted, reality itself seeming to bend where the opposing spirals met. For a moment, they were locked in stalemate, blue against red. Clockwise against counterclockwise. Then both techniques shattered, releasing a shockwave that knocked everyone off their feet. Naruto recovered first, stunned by what had just happened. He had never been able to project the Rasengan before, it had always required direct contact with a target. Kazama was already standing, his mask cracked down the middle to reveal one gleaming eye and part of a smile. Magnificent, he said. The blood remembers, even if you do not. But you're still unconscious to your true heritage. Still a child playing with forces beyond your understanding. He formed another set of unfamiliar signs. We'll meet again, Uzumaki. When you're ready. When you've awakened fully. Wait. Naruto lunged forward, but Kazama's body was already dissolving into a swirl of red mist. Seek the shrine beneath the whirlpool, Kazama's voice echoed as his form disappeared completely. If you dare to learn the truth. And then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of salt and blood. Silence fell over the scene. The young woman had fainted, and Sakura was already moving to check on her. Kakashi stood with his Sharingan eye uncovered, scanning the area for any trace of their opponent. What just happened? Naruto asked, staring at his hand where the Rasengan had formed. How did I do that? I'm not sure, Kakashi said slowly. But it seems our mission just got a lot more complicated. Hinata approached Naruto, her Byakugan still active. Your chakra network, she began, then hesitated. What about it? Naruto asked. It's changed. The pathways are reorganizing themselves. Forming new patterns. She deactivated her Byakugan, her expression troubled. Spiral patterns, just like those lights. Naruto felt the warm pulse in his chest, steady, insistent. Like a second heart beating alongside his own. The blood remembers what the mind forgets, he murmured, echoing the words from his vision. Whatever had happened when he touched that light, whatever changes were occurring within him. One thing was certain. The mission had become personal. This Kazama Shiryu knew things about the Uzumaki clan, about Naruto's heritage, that had been lost for generations. And Naruto was determined to find out what they were. The following morning found Team Kakashi gathered in their room at the inn, speaking in hushed tones. The young woman from the previous night, Amaya, they'd learned, was resting under Sakura's care, having suffered nothing worse than shock and a minor chakra disruption from Kazama's partial technique. We need to report this to Lady Tsunade, Kakashi said, pacing the small room. This Kazama character is clearly dangerous, and his interest in Uzumaki descendants makes this a village security issue. We can't leave yet, Naruto insisted, sitting cross-legged on one of the beds. Not when we're just starting to get answers. Not when there are still missing villagers who might need our help. Naruto's right, Sakura said from where she stood by the window. If we leave now, Kazama might just take more people. Or worse, he might follow us back to Konoha. Kakashi sighed. I'm not suggesting we abandon the mission. Just that, we need to update the Hokage and possibly request reinforcements. While you do that, Naruto said, I want to talk to the villagers. Find out if anyone knows anything about a shrine beneath the whirlpool. I'll come with you, Hinata offered quietly. She had been watching Naruto with concern since the previous night, her Byakugan occasionally activating to check his altered chakra network. Kakashi considered for a moment, then nodded. All right, Sakura, stay with Amaya. Hinata, go with Naruto, but both of you be careful. I'll send a message to the Hokage and then question some of the villagers myself. As they prepared to set out, Naruto caught Hinata studying him again. Is it still changing? He asked. She nodded. Your chakra is still reorganizing. It's beautiful, actually. More efficient than I've ever seen in anyone. Does it look dangerous? Like it might hurt me? No, she said after a moment's consideration. It looks natural, as if your chakra is finally flowing the way it was always meant to. That matched how Naruto felt. The strange sensation that had begun in Konoha had evolved into something that felt right, like he'd been walking with a stone in his sandal his whole life and had finally removed it. They left the inn and made their way toward the docks, where fishermen were preparing their boats for the day's work. The village seemed calmer in the bright morning light, though people still eyed the ninjas warily as they passed. Excuse me, Naruto approached an older fisherman mending a net. Could I ask you something? The man looked up, his weathered face guarded. What do you want to know? Quote, have you ever heard of a shrine beneath a whirlpool? The fisherman's hand stilled. Where did you hear about that? So it exists. Naruto pressed, excitement building. The man glanced around before answering in a lower voice. It's just an old legend. They say that when Uzushio fell, some of their sacred relics were hidden in a shrine built beneath the Great Maelstrom. The Great Maelstrom? Hinata asked. A massive whirlpool off the coast of the land of whirlpools. Always spinning, never stopping. No ship can approach it and survive. The fisherman returned to his net. But it's just a story to frighten children from swimming too far from shore. No one could build anything beneath such a force of nature. Naruto wasn't so sure. Is there anyone in the village who might know more about these legends? Someone who studies local history, maybe. The fisherman considered for a moment. Old Mito might know more. She claims her grandmother came from Uzushio. Lives in the last house on the eastern shore. Red door. Can't miss it. Naruto thanked the man, and they set off toward the eastern edge of the village. As they walked, Naruto found hymns. LF absently gathering chakra in his palm, watching as it naturally formed a small, swirling sphere. You're not using a shadow clone, Hinata observed. You've never been able to form the Rasengan one-handed before. I know. Naruto let the technique dissipate. It just happens now. Like my body remembers how even if my mind doesn't. They found the house with the red door easily enough. It stood apart from the others. Perched on a small rise overlooking the sea. A garden of herbs and flowers surrounded it, many species Naruto didn't recognize. Before they could knock, the door swung open to reveal a tiny, ancient woman with bright eyes and hair that had faded from red to pale pink with age. She wore a simple blue kimono with a pattern of swirling waves around the hem. I've been expecting you, she said, her voice surprisingly strong for one so frail in appearance. The spirits were quite agitated last night. You know about the lights? Naruto asked. The remnants, of course. She stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. Come in, come in. We have much to discuss, young Uzumaki. Naruto started. How did you? Those whisker marks are distinctive, but it's your chakra that gives you away. So bright, so familiar. The old woman smiled. I am Mito, named for the wife of the first Hokage, who was also an Uzumaki, you know. The interior of the small house was cluttered but clean. Every surface covered with books, scrolls, and curious artifacts. Many bore spiral patterns similar to the Uzumaki crest. You've been collecting information about Uzushio, Hinata noted, examining a faded map on one wall. All my life, Mito confirmed, settling into a worn armchair. My grandmother was just a child when Uzushio fell. She escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back and the stories in her head. I've spent decades trying to preserve what she taught me. Then you know about the shrine beneath the whirlpool? Naruto asked eagerly. Mito's eyes sharpened. Who told you of that? The spirit lights, and a man named Kazama Shiryu. The old woman went very still. Kazama. That's impossible. The Kazama clan perished with Uzushio. Well, he says he's the last survivor, Naruto said. And he's been collecting blood samples from people with Uzumaki ancestry. Not just samples, Mito said grimly. He's been taking people. My grandniece was among the first to disappear. Why? Hinata asked. What does he want with them? Mito sighed, suddenly looking every one of her many years. The Kazama clan was once close allies with the Uzumaki. Both clans possessed ECIAL chakra that naturally formed spiral patterns. But where the Uzumaki spiral turned clockwise, creating, building, healing, the Kazama spiral turned counterclockwise, unraveling, breaking down, destroying. That explains the red chakra he used, Naruto murmured. According to the old stories, Mito continued, the Kazama grew jealous of the Uzumaki's greater power and versatility. They believed that if they could unlock the secret of the Uzumaki's bloodline, they could reverse engineer it to enhance their own abilities. Is that even possible? Hinata asked. Who knows? But it seems this Kazama believes it is. Mito fixed Naruto with an intense stare. And now he's found you, a pure-blooded Uzumaki with unusually powerful chakra. You're the prize he's been searching for. The warm pulse in Naruto's chest quickened. The shrine. What's hidden there? Knowledge. Techniques. The highest secrets of the Uzumaki clan. Mito leaned forward, including, it's said, the truth about your clan's special relationship with the tailed beasts. Naruto's hand instinctively went to his stomach, where the seal containing the 9 tails lay. It's no coincidence that Uzumaki were chosen as Jinchuriki for the 9 tails, Mito said. Noticing the gesture, your clan's spiral chakra has a unique ability to contain and eventually harmonize with tailed beast chakra. That's why Mito Uzumaki was the first 9 tails Jinchuriki, followed by Kushina Uzumaki, and now you. My mother, Naruto said softly. He'd learned about Kushina during his training with Jiraiya, but details had been scarce. Yes, and she would be very concerned about what's happening to you now. Mito rose from her chair with surprising agility and moved to a chest in the corner of the room. The changes in your chakra, they're the beginning of what we call the awakening. The recognition and activation of the dormant abilities in Uzumaki blood. She returned with a small, weathered scroll bound with a red cord. This is nay of the few artifacts my grandmother saved from Uzushio. It describes the early stages of the awakening and some basic exercises to help control the process. Naruto accepted the scroll reverently. Thank you. But the shrine contains much more. Complete records, training methods, the history of your clan's techniques. Mito retook her seat, including the true form of the technique you call Rasengan. True form. Naruto looked up from the scroll. What do you mean? The 4th Hokage was a genius to recreate even a simplified version of the spiral sphere technique without Uzumaki blood. What you know as the Rasengan is just the outer shell of a much more complex technique that was once the pinnacle of Uzumaki ninjutsu. How do you know all this? Hinata asked, a note of suspicion in her voice. Mito smiled sadly. Because I tried to awaken too, in my youth. But my blood was too diluted, 1/4 Uzumaki at most. I managed only the smallest manifestations before my body refused to progress further. She held out her hand, and with visible effort, produced a tiny swirl of chakra above her palm. Nothing like a proper Rasengan, but unmistakably similar in its rotation pattern. Even this small technique took me years to master, she said as the swirl faded. But you, young man, have the potential to unlock abilities not seen since Not seen since Uzushio fell, Mito finished, lowering her hand to her lap. If you can find the shrine and learn its secrets. Naruto stared at the scroll in his hands. The weight of heritage, a heritage he'd barely known existed until recently, settled on his shoulders. How do I find this shrine? The fisherman said the great maelstrom is too dangerous to approach. By boat, yes. Mito's eyes twinkled, but perhaps not for someone whose blood resonates with the very force that creates the whirlpool. You think I could, what? Swim through it? Not exactly. Mito reached for a worn book on a nearby table and opened it to a marked page. According to my grandmother, the Uzumaki built a series of seal markers along the coast. When activated with the right chakra signature, they would temporarily calm a path through the maelstrom, allowing access to the shrine. Do you know where these markers are? Hinata asked. I've found 3 over the decades. There should be 7 in total. Mito showed them a hand-drawn map. Closest is just a few miles up the coast, hidden in a sea cave that's only accessible at low tide. Naruto studied the map, memorizing the locations. Thank you, Mito-san. This is more than I ever expected to learn about my clan. It's selfish of me, perhaps, the old woman said with a small smile. I've spent my life preserving these fragments of knowledge, hoping that someday a true Uzumaki would return to claim them. And here you are. A thought struck Naruto. Wait, if you knew about the Uzumaki and have been collecting this information, why didn't you ever contact Konoha? They could have told you about me years ago. Mito's expression grew grave. After Uzushio fell, its survivors scattered and hid their heritage. Many believed that the village was destroyed precisely because nations feared the Uzumaki's sealing techniques and special chakra. My grandmother warned that advertising our connection to the clan would only invite danger. She wasn't wrong, Hinata said softly. Considering what's happening now with Kazama. Indeed. Mito looked troubled. Which reminds me, you must be careful. The awakening process makes your chakra signature more distinct, more Uzumaki. Kazama will be able to sense you more easily now. Let him come, Naruto said with characteristic confidence. I'm not afraid of him. Perhaps you should be, Mito cautioned. The Kazama clan's reversal techniques were specifically designed to counter Uzumaki's spiral chakra. As your abilities grow, so does your vulnerability to his particular skills. Naruto considered this. Then I need to find the shrine quickly. Before he realizes what I'm doing. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Hinata activated her Byakugan briefly. It's Kakashi-sensei, she reported. Mito rose to admit him. Kakashi entered, his visible eye taking in the scroll-filled room with interest. I've been looking for you too, he said. The villagers told me you'd come this way. He nodded respectfully to Mito. I hope they haven't been bothering you, ma'am. Not at all, Mito replied. We've been having a most enlightening conversation about shared heritage. Kakashi's eye moved to the scroll in Naruto's hands. I see. Well, I've sent a message to the Hokage. In the meantime, there's been another development. One of the missing villagers has returned. Returned. Naruto stood quickly. Where? How? She was found wandering on the beach this morning, disoriented and weak. Sakura is examining her now. Kakashi hesitated. There's something else. According to the villagers who found her, she was mumbling about spiral patterns and blood that remembers. Naruto and Hinata exchanged glances. We should go, Naruto said to Mito. But I'll be back. There's still so much I want to ask you. The old woman smiled. My door is always open to you, young Uzumaki. And remember, begin the exercises in that scroll as soon as possible. The awakening has already begun in you. Without guidance, it could become chaotic and dangerous. With promises to return, they took their leave. As they walked back toward the village center, Naruto quietly filled Kakashi in on what they had learned. A shrine beneath a whirlpool, Kakashi mused. It sounds far-fetched, but then again, so do many true things in our world. I believe it exists, Naruto said firmly. And I need to find it, Kakashi-sensei. Not just to stop Kazama, but for myself. To understand where I come from. Kakashi studied his former student thoughtfully. I understand, but we need to be strategic about this. If Kazama is as dangerous as he seems, rushing in alone would be foolish. I won't be alone, Naruto grinned, glancing at Hinata. I'll have you guys with me. They reached the inn to find Sakura emerging from a room, her face troubled. How is she? Kakashi asked. Physically stable, but, Sakura shook her head. Something's wrong with her chakra system. It's as if someone tried to rewrite it somehow. The pathways are damaged, twisted in places. Kazama, Naruto growled. He's experimenting on them. She's been asking for you, Naruto, Sakura said. She keeps saying she needs to warn the spiral child. I think she means you. Inside the small room, a young woman lay on a bed, her red-tinged brown hair spread across the pillow. Her skin was pale, with a network of faint red lines visible beneath, like cracks in porcelain. Her eyes opened as they entered. Once brown, they now had flecks of crimson swirling in the irises. You came, she whispered, her gaze fixing on Naruto. The true spiral. I'm here, Naruto said gently. Approaching the bedside. What's your name? Hana. Was a fisher. Her voice strengthened slightly. He took me 3 weeks ago. Me and the others. Others. They're alive? Naruto asked eagerly. Some. Not all. Hana's face contorted with pain, the red lines beneath her skin briefly glowing. He uses us. Experiments. Tries to make us like you. But it doesn't work. Our blood isn't pure enough. What does he do exactly? Kakashi asked. Takes blood. Infuses his own chakra. Tries to make our spiral patterns match his. Hana's eyes closed briefly. When it fails, he discards us. Or tries again with more invasive methods. Naruto felt sick. How did you escape? Didn't. He released me, as a message. Her trembling hand reached out to grasp Naruto's. To you, he said. Tell the pure spiral that the clock is ticking. The shrine's secrets will be his, one way or another. Do you know where he's keeping the others? Hinata asked. Hana nodded weakly. Island. Small island 2 miles offshore. Old ruins there, underground chambers. That's his laboratory. Kakashi and Naruto exchanged glances. This was the lead they needed. Rest now, Sakura told Hana, administering a mild sedative. You're safe. As Hana drifted into sleep, they retreated to the hallway to discuss their next move. We need to raid that island, Naruto said immediately. Save the prisoners and stop Kazama. Agreed, but we need to be careful, Kakashi cautioned. Kazama clearly wants you to come to him. This could be a trap. I don't care if it is, Naruto replied, warm pulse in his chest flaring with his anger. We can't leave those people with him. We won't, Kakashi assured him. But first, I want you to work with that scroll Mito gave you. If your chakra is changing, you need to understand and control it before confronting Kazama. Naruto wanted to argue but knew his teacher was right. Fine, I'll start right away. Hinata, your Byakugan will be essential for the rescue operation. I want you to rest and conserve your chakra. Kakashi turned to Sakura. Keep monitoring Hana. Her condition might give us insights into what Kazama is capable of. With their tasks assigned, they separated. Naruto took the scroll to the inn's small garden, finding a quiet corner beneath a gnarled pine tree. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, he untied the red core. And carefully unrolled the ancient parchment. The text was written in an old-fashioned script, but readable. It began with a brief history of the Uzumaki clan's special chakra, how their life force utterly formed spiral patterns that enhanced their vitality, chakra reserves, and healing abilities. These traits were present in all Uzumaki to some degree, but the awakening was described as a rare process where these inherent abilities evolved into something far more potent. The first exercise described in the scroll was deceptively simple: visualization and awareness. Naruto was to meditate, focusing on the natural spiral flow of his chakra, not attempting to direct it but simply observing its patterns. Closing his eyes, Naruto steadied his breathing and turned his attention inward. At first, he was aware only of the usual sensation of his chakra, the vast reservoir within him, partly his own and partly the Nine Tails. But as he continued to focus, he began to perceive something new: currents within the reservoir, moving in complex spiral patterns. The longer he observed, the more detail he could discern. His own chakra formed tight, clockwise spirals, while the Nine Tails chakra moved in wider, more chaotic patterns. Where the two met, interesting interactions occurred, sometimes reinforcing each other, sometimes creating turbulence. As his awareness deepened, Naruto realized he could subtly influence these patterns without actively molding chakra. Just by focusing his attention on a particular area, the spirals would tighten or loosen, speed up or slow down. The warm pull, say in his chest, which he now recognized as a nexus point where many spiral patterns converged, responded to his awareness, growing stronger and more defined. Time lost meaning as Naruto explored this new inner landscape. He might have continued for hours if not for a gentle hand on his shoulder. Naruto, Hinata's soft voice broke through his meditation. It's almost sunset. He opened his eyes, surprised to find the garden now bathed in golden evening light. I've been here that long. Hinata nodded, her Byakugan active. Your chakra, it's beautiful. The spiral patterns have become much more organized and stable. Naruto realized he felt different, calmer, more centered, and somehow more connected to his own body. The chaotic pressure he'd felt earlier had transformed into a steady, powerful current flowing through him. The scroll was right, he said, carefully rolling it up again. Just being aware of the spirals helps to organize them. Kakashi-sensei wants us to meet for dinner to plan tomorrow's mission, Hinata said, offering a hand to help him up. Naruto accepted, noticing as he did how his chakra automatically adjusted to the brief contact with Hinata's, like two streams erging momentarily before flowing apart again. Something wrong? Hinata asked, noticing his expression. No, just noticing things I never saw before. Naruto smiled. Let's go eat. I'm starving. As they walked back to the inn, Naruto felt a new confidence growing within him. Whatever mysteries awaited at the shrine, whatever threats Kazama posed, he was beginning to believe that his Uzumaki heritage might be the key to facing them. The blood remembers, the spirit had said. And his blood was finally awakening to its true potential. Dawn found them preparing to depart for the offshore island. Kakashi had scouted it from the mainland using a telescope, confirming it was small and apparently uninhabited, with visible ruins on its eastern side. The plan is simple, Kakashi explained as He gathered on a secluded stretch of beach. We approach from the water, using chakra to walk across the surface. Hinata will use her Byakugan to locate any underground chambers and the captives. We prioritize freeing the prisoners. But if we can apprehend Kazama in the process, all the better. What about the shrine? Naruto asked, the scroll from Mito tucked safely in his pack. That's secondary to the rescue mission, Kakashi said firmly. But if we secure the island and the prisoners are safe, we can consider investigating the seal markers Mito told you about. They moved out, sprinting across the water's surface toward the distant island. As they drew closer, Naruto could make out crumbling stone structures among the sparse vegetation, the remnants of what might once have been a small outpost or temple. Hinata, Kakashi prompted when they were about halfway to the island. She activated her Byakugan, scanning the island intensely. I see. Chambers beneath the ruins, as Hana described. There are 8 people inside, excluding Kazama. They appear to be in cells of some kind. Kazama is there? Naruto asked. Yes, Hinata confirmed. He's in a central chamber, working with equipment I don't recognize. There are seals everywhere, on the walls, the floors, even on the prisoners themselves. Guards? Kakashi inquired. None that I can see. Just Kazama. Hinata frowned. But there are objects moving through the complex. Like the spirit lights we saw, but smaller and faster. Probably some kind of chakra constructs or security measures, Kakashi theorized. We'll need to be careful. They reached the island, landing silently on its rocky shore. Up close, the ruins were more extensive than they'd appeared from a distance, weathered stone buildings with spiral patterns carved into their walls. Now half reclaimed by nature. These are Uzushio-style constructions, Kakashi noted. This might have been an outpost of the Uzumaki clan. Following Hinata's directions, they made their way to what appeared to be a collapsed temple at the island's center. Stone steps led down into darkness beneath the ruined structure. The entrance is trapped, Hinata warned. Seals on the 3rd, 7th, and 9th steps. Kakashi examined the seals without touching them. Recognition seals. They're designed to detect specific chakra signatures. Kazama's? Sakura asked. No, Naruto said, feeling the now familiar pulse in his chest resonating with the symbols. Uzumaki chakra. These are from the original structure, not Kazama's additions. Can you deactivate them? Kakashi asked. Naruto considered the seals. According to the scroll he'd studied, Uzumaki seals often responded to the intent behind the chakra as much as the chakra itself. I think I can communicate with them, sort of. He knelt by the first sealed step and placed his hand just above it. Closing his eyes, he focused on the spiral patterns within his chakra, allowing a small amount to flow. Toward the seal while projecting peaceful intent. I am Uzumaki, I mean no harm to this place. The seal glowed briefly, then faded from angry red to a soft blue. Naruto moved to the next sealed step and repeated the process, then the 3rd. They're dormant now, he said, standing. They recognize me as having the right to enter. Impressive, Kakashi murmured. Let's proceed, but stay alert. Kazama will have his own security measures. Quote, they descended into the darkness, Sakura creating a small light to guide their way. The stairs led deep underground, eventually opening into a corridor lined with the same spiral carved stone as the ruins above. Hinata led them through the complex, her Byakugan allowing them to avoid several of Kazama's traps, explosive tags hidden in crevices, pressure plates that would trigger poison darts, and tripwires connected to alarm seals. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. The prisoners are that way, Hinata pointed to the left passage. Kazama is in the central chamber, straight ahead. We split up, Kakashi decided. Sakura, Hinata, free the prisoners and get them to safety. Naruto and I will deal with Kazama. As they prepared to separate, Naruto felt a sudden spike in the warm pulse in his chest. Wait, he whispered urgently. Something's coming. A moment later, tiny points of red light appeared in the corridor ahead, dozens of them. Like miniature versions of the spirit lights they'd seen in the village. But where those had moved with a curious, almost playful quality, these darted with obvious purpose and malice. Chakra constructs, Kakashi confirmed. Defensive measures. The lights accelerated toward them, forming into needle-like projectiles as they approached. Get down, Kakashi shouted, his hands forming signs for a defensive jutsu. But Naruto was already moving, guided by instinct and the knowledge from Mito's scroll. His hands formed a modified version of the seal he'd learned for focusing spiral chakra. The warm pulse in his chest expanded outward through his entire chakra network. Spiral barrier, he called out, not entirely sure where the technique's name came from, it simply felt right. Blue chakra erupted from his body, forming a dome of swirling energy around the group. The red projectiles struck the barrier and were caught in its rotation, their momentum absorbed and neutralized as they were drawn into the spiral patterns. What the? Sakura began, staring at the technique Naruto had created seemingly from nowhere. No time to explain, Naruto said, maintaining the bar wire with one hand while forming a Rasengan in the other, again, without the need for a shadow clone. You two go free the prisoners. We'll handle this and meet Kazama. Hinata hesitated. Naruto, we'll be fine, he assured her with a confident grin. This is what I've been preparing for. Go. With a reluctant nod, Hinata and Sakura slipped down the left corridor while Naruto and Kakashi faced the main path, where more red lights were gathering. That's a technique I've never seen before, Kakashi commented, his Sharingan eye uncovered and analyzing the spiral barrier. Me neither, Naruto admitted. It just came to me. He released the barrier as the immediate threat subsided. Come on, let's find Kazama before he realizes we're here. They moved swiftly down the central corridor, entering more of the red chakra constructs, which Naruto dispatched with his newfound spiral techniques. It was as if knowledge that had been dormant in his blood was awakening with each challenge, threat triggering new instinctive responses. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that might once have been beautiful. The high ceiling was covered in intricate spiral patterns that had been partially defaced and overlaid with Kazama's own seals. In the center stood a complex apparatus, tubes and containers connected by seals, with a central platform surrounded by spiral markings flowing in a counterclockwise direction. And there stood Kazama, his mask now completely discarded to reveal a gaunt face with sharp features and eyes that swirled with red chakra. He was feeding Crimson Energy a container that held what appeared to be blood samples. Right on schedule, Kazama said without looking up from his work. I expected you yesterday, but today will do just as well. Release your prisoners and surrender, Kakashi demanded, chakra gathering around his hand in preparation for his lightning blade technique. Kazama finally looked up, his swirling eyes fixing on Naruto. Magnificent, he breathed. Your awakening progresses faster than I anticipated. Already channeling spiral techniques instinctively. It's over, Kazama, Naruto said, a Rasengan forming in his palm. Whatever you're trying to do with these people, it stops now. Oh, I agree, Kazama smiled, revealing teeth stained slightly red. The preliminary work is complete. These test subjects have served their pure pose, confirming that only a pure-blooded Uzumaki can properly manifest the spiral bloodline. He gestured to the apparatus. Their contributions allowed me to map the specific genetic markers and chakra patterns unique to your clan. Invaluable data, but merely preparatory. Preparatory for what? Kakashi asked, slowly edging to the side to flank Kazama. For the main event, of course. Kazama's smile widened as he looked directly at Naruto. The extraction and transfer of the fully awakened Uzumaki bloodline. From him to me, Naruto felt a chill despite the warm power flowing through him. That's impossible, is it? The first Hokage's wood release was successfully transplanted into others. The Sharingan can be transplanted. Why not the Uzumaki spiral bloodline? Kazama formed a hand sign, and the seals around the chamber began to glow. I've spent decades preparing for this moment, finding the right subject, creating the perfect extraction process. That's why you released Hana, Kakashi realized. To lure Naruto here, of course. I needed him in the final stages of awakening, but not fully mastered. The perfect balance of potency and vulnerability. Kazama completed a sequence of signs. And now he's delivered himself to me, right on cue. The seals covering the floor suddenly activated, racing toward Naruto in lines of crimson light. He leapt back, but the seals followed, spiraling around him like predators circling prey. Naruto. Kakashi moved to help, but found himself blocked by a barrier of red chakra that sprang up between them. Your sensei can watch, Kazama said, walking toward Naruto as the seals continued their dance. It's always good to have a witness to history. Naruto formed the sign for shadow clones, but before he could complete the technique, one of the crimson seals latched onto his ankle. Pain shot through him as the seal began to spread up his leg, counterclockwise spirals fighting against his natural chakra flow. A disruptive seal, Kazama explained. It reverses the direction of your spiral chakra, making your techniques impossible to form correctly. Ingenious, isn't it? Naruto dropped to one knee as the seal continued to spread, the pain intensifying. He could feel his carefully cultivated spiral patterns becoming chaotic, fighting against the artificial reversal Kazama was imposing. Don't fight it, Kazama advised, now standing directly over him. The more you resist, the more painful the process becomes. Simply allow your spirals to be reversed, and the discomfort will fade. Never, Naruto growled, focusing on the war pulse in his chest, the core of his awakening Uzumaki heritage. It remained steady despite the disruption in his legs and lower body. Kakashi was attacking the barrier with his lightning blade, but he red chakra simply absorbed the strikes, growing stronger with each attempt. Your friends have found my test subjects by now, Kazama commented casually. I no longer need them, so consider their freedom my parting gift. You, however, he knelt to look Naruto in the eye, you will give me what I've sought for so long. The pure spiral bloodline, the ultimate Uzumaki power. The seal had reached Naruto's waist now, and he could barely remain upright as his chakra fought against itself. But within the pain and confusion, a clarity was forming. The scroll from Mito had described this, how the Uzumaki had developed techniques to protect their unique chakra from exactly this kind of attack. The blood remembers, he thought, focusing on that steady pulse at his core. Even if the mind forgets. Naruto closed his eyes, ceasing his resistance against the invasive seal. Instead, he directed his attention inward, to the nexus of spiral energy in his chest. Rather than fighting the reversal directly, he began to create a counter-spiral, a small, intense clockwise pattern that moved independently of his normal chakra flow. Yes, that's it, Kazama said, misinterpreting Naruto's stillness as surrender. Accept the inevitable. The crimson seal reached Naruto's chest, where it encountered the counter-spiral he had been cultivating. Instead of continuing its spread, the seal paused, the two opposing spiral patterns locked in stalemate. Naruto opened his eyes, meeting Kazama's gaze. You're right about one thing, he said through gritted teeth. The Uzumaki spiral bloodline is powerful. But you're wrong if you think it can be stolen. With a tremendous effort, Naruto expanded the counter-spiral outward. The crimson seal began to crack, red light spilling from the fissures. Impossible, Kazama breathed, stepping back. The reversal seal is perfect. It cannot be overcome by raw power. It's not about power, Naruto said, rising to his feet as the seal continued to fracture. It's about harmony, balance, the things your clan never understood. The seal shattered completely, fragments of crimson chakra dissolving into the air. Naruto stood tall, his body now surrounded by a visible aura of blue spiral energy, far more controlled and focused than the Nine-Tails cloak he sometimes manifested. No, Kazama frantically formed more hand signs. I won't be denied. Not when I'm so close. The remaining seals around the chamber converged on Naruto all at once, a desperate, all-out attack. But Naruto was ready. The knowledge that had been awakening in his blood had reached a new level of clarity. He understood now what the spirit lights had been trying to show him, what Mito's scroll had been preparing him for. His hands moved through a sequence of signs that felt as natural as breathing. Though he had never performed them before. Uzumaki art. Spiral nexus. The blue aura around him exploded outward in countless threads of chakra, each moving in a perfect spiral pattern. They intercepted Kazama's seals, neutralizing them by absorbing their energy and converting the chaotic reversals into harmonious flow. The barrier separating him from Kakashi dissolved as its chakra was drawn into Naruto's technique. The entire chamber was filled with swirling blue light, illuminating the ancient patterns on the ceiling, patterns that began to glow in response, as if awakening from a long slumber. Kazama stared in horror and fascination as his years of work unraveled before him. The full awakening, he whispered. So soon, it shouldn't be possible. Naruto advanced on him, the spiral nexus technique still active around him. It's over, Kazama. Your experiments, your hunt for Uzumaki descendants, all of it ends now. But Kazama's expression shifted from shock to cunning. Perhaps this phase ends, but the game continues. His hands formed one final sign. Until we meet again, pure spiral. Before Naruto or Kakashi could reach him, Kazama's body dissolved into a swirl of red mist. Similar to his escape in the village. But this time, Naruto was ready. He directed a thread of his spiral chakra to follow the mist, tracking its movement through the chamber and into a hidden passage behind the central apparatus. This way, Naruto called to Kakashi, releasing the spiral nexus technique and sprinting toward the passage. They raced through a narrow tunnel that sloped upward, eventually emerging on the far side of the island. There, at the water's edge, they caught a glimpse of Kazama in a small boat, already dozens of yards from shore. We need to pursue him, Naruto said, preparing to run across the water's surface. Kakashi placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. Wait, look where he's heading. Naruto squinted against the morning sun reflecting off the sea. In the distance, where the horizon met the water, a massive disturbance was visible, a vast swirling pattern that churned the ocean into foam. The great maelstrom, he breathed. He's leading you to the shrine, Kakashi said grimly. Just as he planned all along. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he watched Kazama's boat approach the deadly whirlpool. But why? If he knows of Awakened more fully, he must realize he can't overpower me now. Perhaps he doesn't need to overpower you. Kakashi's expression was troubled. Perhaps he just needs you to open the shrine for him. The ancient seals recognized you as Uzumaki. Maybe the shrine has similar protections that only you can bypass. The realization struck Naruto like a physical blow. We've been playing into his hands from the start. Not entirely, Kakashi said, turning as Hinata and Sakura emerged from another tunnel with several weak but walking prisoners. We've rescued his captives. That wasn't part of his plan. As the group reached them, Naruto saw that the former prisoners were indeed free of Kazama's experimental seals, though many still bore red marks where the chakra had damaged their systems. Is everyone all right? He asked. They will be, Sakura reported. Their chakra systems are damaged but should heal with time and proper care. We found and neutralized all of Kazama's equipment. What about Kazama himself? Hinata asked, scanning the area with her Byakugan. Escaped, Kakashi said shortly. Heading for the great maelstrom. And the shrine beneath it, Naruto added. One of the rescued prisoners, an elderly man with faint red highlights in his gray hair, stepped forward unsteadily. The shrine is real, then. We thought it just a legend. You know of it? Naruto asked eagerly. Stories passed down through generations, the man said. My grandmother was from a minor branch of the Uzumaki. She spoke of a sacred place where the clan's greatest secrets were preserved. Did she say what was hidden there? Kakashi inquired. The old man shook his head. Only that it contained knowledge too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. Knowledge that could change the balance of power among the great nations if misused. Naruto looked out to sea again. Where Kazama's boat was now just a distant speck approaching the massive whirlpool. Then we can't let Kazama reach it first. We need to get these people to safety, Sakura reminded him. They need medical attention. And we need to report to the Hokage, Kakashi added. This situation has escalated beyond our original mission parameters. Naruto knew they were right. But the pull he felt toward the maelstrom was almost physical, a tug on his awakening chakra, calling him to the shrine of his ancestors. We'll return to Nagale with the rescued villagers, Kakashi decided, reading Naruto's conflict in his expression. Naruto, I know you want to pursue Kazama immediately, but rushing after him alone would be playing right into his hands. We need to regroup and plan. Reluctantly, Naruto nodded. The warm pulse in his chest had settled into a steady rhythm, no longer urgent but patient, as if it too understood that the time wasn't yet right. They helped the former captives back to the hidden dock they'd discovered on the island, where Kazama had kept a larger boat. As they prepared to depart, Naruto took one last look at the distant maelstrom. I'll find you, Kazama, he promised quietly. And I'll discover the truth about my clan, not for your purposes, but for my own. The journey back to Nagale was slow due to the weakened condition of the rescued villagers, but by mid-afternoon, they had returned to a hero's welcome. Word of their success had somehow preceded them, and the entire village turned out to greet the returning captives. As medic, care was arranged and families reunited. Naruto found himself drawn back to Mito's small house on the eastern shore. He had questions only she might be able to answer. The old woman seemed unsurprised by his return, ushering him inside with a knowing smile. You've grown stronger already, she observed. The spiral patterns in your chakra are much more defined. I faced Kazama, Naruto told her, accepting the tea she offered. I used techniques I never learned. They just came to me in the moment of need. The awakening, Mito nodded. As your blood remembers, so too does your body. The techniques are encoded in your very cells, waiting to be rediscovered. Kazama escaped, Naruto continued. He's heading for the great maelstrom, for the shrine. Mito's expression grew grave. Then the situation is dire indeed. If he finds a way to enter the shrine, what exactly is hidden there? Naruto asked. Everyone speaks of dangerous knowledge, great secrets, but no one will say what they actually are. The old woman was silent for a long moment, weighing her words carefully. The shrine contains many things: historical records, technique scrolls, artifacts saved from Uzushio's destruction. But its greatest treasure, the one Kazama surely seeks, is the knowledge of the Supreme Rasengan. Supreme Rasengan. Naruto leaned forward. What's that? The ultimate expression of the Uzumaki spiral bloodline. A technique that doesn't merely damage the body, but affects the very nature of chakra itself. Mito's eyes took on a faraway look. It is said that the Supreme Rasengan can alter the chakra network of its target, rewriting pathways, changing affinities, even sealing away abilities. Naruto's mind raced with the implications. So Kazama wants this technique to, what? Change his own chakra to be more like the Uzumaki's. Or to use against his enemies, Mito said gravely. Imagine a technique that could permanently disable a ninja's ability to mold chakra. Or one that could convert chakra reserves into a different nature entirely. The strategic value would be immeasurable. Naruto thought of his friends in Konoha, of powerful ninja like Kakashi and Tsunade. Even of enemies like the Akatsuki. A technique that could rewrite their chakra networks would render their lifelong training meaningless in an instant. I can't let him get that, Naruto said firmly. But how would he even use it without Uzumaki blood? That's why he needs you, Mito explained. The shrine will only reveal its secrets to one with Uzumaki chakra. And the Supreme Rasengan can only be performed by someone with the fully awakened bloodline. But if he could extract your awakened chakra network somehow and integrate it into his own body. Like Orochimaru transferring between bodies. Naruto murmured, a chill running through him despite the warm pulse in his chest. Precisely. Mito reached across the table to grasp his hand. Which is why you Saint reached the shrine before him. Not to stop him from entering, for that may be impossible now, but to claim your heritage before he can steal it from you. Kakashi-sensei wants us to report back to Konoha first, Naruto said. Conflict evident in his voice. A wise precaution under normal circumstances, Mito agreed. But these are not normal circumstances. The shrine's location is only accessible during rare alignments of tide and current, the next being 3 days from now, at dawn. 3 days, Naruto repeated. Not enough time to go to Konoha and back. No, and Kazama knows this. Mito rose, moving to a chest in the corner of the room. Which is why I've prepared for this moment ever since I sensed the remnants awakening. She returned with a weathered map and 3 small objects that looked like polished stone discs, each carved with a spiral pattern. These are the key markers I've recovered over the years, she explained, spreading the map on the table. They must be placed at these 3 points along the coast before the alignment. When activated with Uzumaki chakra, they will calm a path through the Great Maelstrom, allowing access to the shrine entrance. Naruto studied the map intently. These locations are miles apart. Yes, a deliberate security measure by our ancestors. Mito pushed the stone markers toward him. You'll need help placing them simultaneously. My friends, Naruto nodded. Kakashi, Sakura, Hinata, they'll help. If your sensei agrees, Mito cautioned. He seems a prudent man who follows protocol. Naruto's expression turned determined. This is bigger than protocol. Once he understands what's at stake, he'll help. Then take these. Mito handed him the markers and map. And this. She produced a final scroll, smaller than the first but bound with the same red cord. More advanced exercises to help control your awakening abilities. You've progressed remarkably quickly, but the true test lies ahead. Naruto accepted the items with a respectful bow. Thank you, Mito-san. For everything. Thank me by reclaiming our heritage, the old woman said with a smile. And by using it wisely. The Uzumaki were destroyed in part because others feared their power. Remember that as you awaken to your full potential. With renewed purpose, Naruto returned to the village center, where Kakashi was composing a detailed report for the Hokage. The Jonin looked up as Naruto approached, noting the items he carried. More information from your elderly friend? He asked. More than information, Naruto replied, spreading Mito's map on the table. A way to reach the shrine before Kazama can misuse its secrets. He quickly explained what he'd learned about the Supreme Rasengan and the title alignment 3 days away. Kakashi listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This is exactly why we should return to Konoha, he said when Naruto finished. A technique of this magnitude should be handled with full backup, possibly even Anbu involvement. There's no time, Naruto insisted. If we leave, Kazama gets there first. If he figures out how to extract my bloodline ability, he could gain a technique that would threaten everyone, including Konoha. Kakashi studied the map silently for a long moment. You realize this could be another trap, drawing us to the maelstrom, splitting our forces to place these markers. It's possible, Naruto admitted, but the risk of doing nothing is greater. Hinata and Sakura joined them, having finished tending to the rescued villagers. Naruto repeated his explanation, showing them the markers and the locations where they needed to be placed. So we'd need to activate these simultaneously at dawn in 3 days. Sakura clarified, examining one of the stone discs. Exactly, Naruto confirmed. Each marker needs Uzumaki chakra to activate, which I can provide before we separate. And then what? Kakashi asked. You swim into the calmed maelstrom alone. Not alone, Hinata said quietly but firmly. I'll go with him. My Byakugan will help navigate whatever is beneath the surface. Naruto looked at her in surprise. Hinata, she's right, Kakashi sighed, relenting. If we're doing this, no one goes alone. Sakura and I will position ourselves at the other markers while you two approach the shrine entrance. But, his eye hardened, this is reconnaissance only. If you find the shrine, you assess the situation and wait for backup if Kazama is present. No heroics. Agreed, Naruto said, relief washing over him. He hadn't been sure Kakashi would support this deviation from their mission. I'll still send a preliminary report to Lady Tsunade, Kakashi added. She should know what we've discovered and what we're planning. With luck, reinforcements might reach us before you have to enter the shrine. The next 2 days passed in intensive preparation. Naruto spent hours with Mito's scrolls, working to control and direct his awakening abilities. The exercises grew more challenging. teaching him to maintain multiple spiral patterns simultaneously and to project his chakra in precisely controlled waves. Hinata often joined him, her Byakugan allowing her to observe his progress and offer insights on how his chakra was changing. Sometimes they trained in silence, but occasionally they would talk about his discoveries, about her observations, and gradually, about more personal matters. "Does it scare you?" she asked on the evening of the second day, as they sat on the beach watching the distant churning of the great maelstrom. "Finding out you have this bloodline ability that's been dormant all this time." Naruto considered the question seriously. "A little," he admitted. "It's strange to think there's this whole part of me I never knew about. But mostly it feels right. Like finding a piece of myself that was missing." "I understand that feeling," Hinata said softly. "When I finally began to develop my own way of using the gentle fist, rather than just following the traditional Hyuga methods, it felt like becoming more myself, not less." Naruto glanced at her with new appreciation. Hinata had always been quiet, easy to overlook, these past days had revealed depths to her he'd never fully noticed before. Her calm strength, her perceptiveness, her unwavering support, all while never trying to control or direct him as others might have done. "Thank you," he said suddenly. She looked at him in surprise. "For what?" "For seeing me," he replied simply. "Not just the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, or the troublemaker, or now the Uzumaki bloodline carrier. Just me." A faint blush colored Hinata's cheeks, but she held his gaze. "I've always seen you, Naruto. Even when no one else did." The warm pulse in his chest flared briefly, resonating with something in her words. Before he could respond, Kakashi appeared on the beach behind them. "It's time," he said. "We should infuse the markers with your chakra and get into position. The tidal alignment begins an hour before dawn." The moment broken, Naruto and Hinata rose to join Kakashi. Sakura waited back at the village with the 3 stone markers laid out on a table. "The process is simple," Naruto explained. "Having practiced with Mito's guidance, I'll charge each marker with my chakra, setting them to activate simultaneously when the alignment begins. After that, we each need to be at our designated positions along the coast." He placed his hands over the first marker and closed his eyes, focusing on the spiral patterns flowing through him. Carefully, he directed a portion of his chakra into the stone disk, feeling the ancient carvings respond to his energy. The marker glowed blue briefly, then settled into a soft, pulsing rhythm, like a heartbeat matching the warm pulse in his chest. Naruto repeated the process with the other 2 markers. When he finished, all 3 disks pulsed with the same steady rhythm, synchronized to each other and to him. "They're ready," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. The precision required for the technique had been taxing, even with his enormous chakra reserves. Kakashi and Sakura each took one of the markers, securing them carefully in their equipment pouches. "Remember the plan," Kakashi said as they prepared to depart. "Position the markers exactly as indicated on the map. Activate them precisely at dawn. Naruto and Hinata will approach the maelstrom from the eastern point. If they find the shrine entrance, they wait for my signal before entering. Unless Kazama has already entered," Naruto added. "If he's inside, we follow." Kakashi looked like he wanted to argue but nodded reluctantly. "If he's already inside, pursue with caution. But your priority is securing the knowledge, not confronting him." With final checks of their equipment, the team split up, each heading to their designated positions along the coastline. Naruto and Hinata traveled east, moving swiftly through the pre-dawn darkness. They reached their position with an hour to spare, a rocky promontory extending into the sea, providing the closest safe viewing point of the great maelstrom. Even from this distance, the massive whirlpool was an awesome and terrifying sight. At least a quarter-mile across, it churned the sea into a roaring vortex that descended into impenetrable darkness. The sound was like constant thunder, and spray the turbulence created a perpetual mist in the air around it. "Kazama must already be out there somewhere," Hinata said, her Byakugan active as she scanned the area. "Though I don't see him yet. He'll be hiding, waiting for us to create the path," Naruto replied, removing the 3rd marker from his pack. "But that's okay. We know he's coming." He placed the stone disk in the precise location I indicated on Mito's map. a natural depression in the rock that seemed almost designed for this purpose. Then they settled down to wait for dawn. As the eastern sky began to lighten, Naruto felt the mark. Resonating more strongly with his chakra. The alignment was approaching. It's almost time, he said, rising to his feet. Can you see the others? Hinata nodded. Kakashi-sensei and Sakura are in position. The markers are placed correctly. The first ray of sunlight crested the horizon, striking the water of the maelstrom and creating a momentary rainbow in its mist. Naruto felt the markers activate simultaneously, drawing on the chakra he had infused them with. A wave of blue energy spread outward from each marker, racing across the water's surface toward the maelstrom. Where the three Avs met at the edge of the great vortex, they began to spiral inward, not fighting against the maelstrom's rotation but harmonizing with it, guiding it into a new pattern. Slowly, majestically, the chaotic turbulence began to calm. A path opened through the whirlpool, not stopping its rotation entirely, but creating a stable spiral staircase of water leading down into its depths. It worked, Naruto breathed, watching the miracle unfold. There, Hinata pointed to a spot on the opposite side of the maelstrom. Kazama is moving. Naruto followed her gesture and saw a small figure leaping onto the watery spiral pathway, descending quickly into the vortex. We need to go now, he said, stepping to the edge of the promontory. Ready, Hinata nodded, determination in her pale eyes. Together, the Y leapt onto the nearest curve of the spiral pathway. The water beneath their feet was solid enough to walk on with chakra control, yet it continued to flow in its circular pattern. It was like running on a moving walkway, requiring constant adjustments to maintain balance. They descended deeper into the maelstrom, the roar of water surrounding them on all sides. The morning sunlight grew dimmer as they spiraled downward, until they were moving through twilight conditions despite the dawn above. How much further? Naruto called over the thunder of water. I can see the bottom now, Hinata replied, her Byakugan peering through the gloom. There's an opening, a cave or tunnel. Kazama has already entered it. They reached the bottom of the spiral, where the water converged to a single point before draining into a large, perfectly circular opening in the seabed. The opening was ringed with stone carved with spiral patterns, clearly artificial rather than natural. The shrine entrance, Naruto said, feeling the warm pulse in his chest resonating with the ancient stonework. Without hesitation, they plunged into the opening, dropping through a short vertical shaft before landing in a flooded tunnel. The water here was calm, about knee-deep, and flowed gently further into the passage. Luminescent algae growing on the walls provided soft blue-green light. Kazama, Naruto asked quietly. Hinata scanned ahead, moving quickly through the tunnel system. He seems to know where he's going. They followed, moving as silently as possible through the shallow water. The tunnel descended gradually, curving in a gentle spiral that took them deeper beneath the seabed. Occasionally they passed side chambers, some containing stone tablets covered in writing too eroded to read, others housing broken containers or damaged scrolls. This place has been flooded before, Naruto observed, noting water damage to many of the artifacts. Maybe multiple times. The main chambers appear to be higher, Hinata said. Dry and better preserved. The tunnel eventually opened into a vast circular chamber, its ceiling supported by columns carved to resemble massive spirals. The floor rose above the water level here, and intricate mosaics depicted scenes from what Naruto assumed was Uzushio's history. Where's Kazama? He whispered. Through there, Hinata pointed to an archway on the far side of the chamber. He's in some kind of central room. There's an object, a pedestal or altar of some kind. He's examining it. They crossed the chamber quickly, pausing at the archway to assess the situation before entering. Beyond lay a smaller, octagonal room with a domed ceiling. In its center stood a pedestal of white stone, upon which rested a large crystal sphere. The sphere contained what appeared to be swirling chakra, suspended and preserved for who knew how many decades or centuries. Kazama stood before the pedestal, his hands moving through a complex sequence of signs. He was so focused on the sphere that he hadn't noticed their arrival. We should wait for Kakashi-sensei, Hinata whispered. But even as she spoke, Naruto felt a change in the markers he had created. Their synchronized pulse faltered, then stopped entirely. The alignment is ending, he realized. The path through the maelstrom will close soon. They had minutes, not hours, to act. Kazama, Naruto called out, stepping into the chamber. Step away from that. The man turned, his swirling red eyes widening in surprise before narrowing with calculation. The pure spiral arrives. Right on schedule. It's over, Naruto said, forming a Rasengan in his palm, the technique coming easily now, almost as natural as breathing. You won't get the Supreme Rasengan. Kazama smiled, an unsettling expression on his gaunt face. Won't I? Look around you, Uzumaki. You've delivered everything I need directly to me. For the first time, Naruto noticed seals covering the floor of the chamber, not ancient Uzumaki seals, but were ones that pulsed with Kazama's red chakra. A trap, Hinata breathed, her Byakugan identifying the danger too late. Of course, Kazama said, completing his hand sign sequence. I've had years to prepare this place, waiting for a worthy Uzumaki to arrive and awaken the final seal. The crystal sphere on the pedestal began to glow, the chakra within it swirling faster. That's it, isn't it? Naruto asked, understanding dawning. The template for the Supreme Rasengan, preserved by the last masters of Uzushio. Indeed. Brilliant, isn't it? They knew their village would fall, so they preserved their greatest technique in a form that could only be accessed by one with their bloodline. Kazama's voice held genuine admiration. But they never anticipated someone like me, patient enough to study their methods for decades. Clever enough to create a workaround. The seals on the floor activated, shooting lines of red chakra toward Naruto. Unlike before, these didn't attempt to reverse his spiral patterns, instead. They began to draw his chakra out, pulling it toward the crystal sphere. What are you doing? Naruto demanded, trying to break free of the chakra drain but finding himself immobilized. Creating a bridge, Kazama explained, his hands continuing to form signs. Your Uzumaki chakra will unlock the sphere's contents, and my reversal technique will simultaneously transfer the knowledge into my own chakra network. I'll gain the Supreme Rasengan without needing to steal your body at all. Much cleaner. Hinata moved to intervene, but more seals activated, creating a barrier that separated her from Naruto and Kazama. Naruto, she called out, striking the barrier with her gentle fist technique to no effect. The drain on Naruto's chakra intensified, the warm pulse in his Saint being pulled painfully toward the crystal sphere. He could feel his awakened abilities responding to the ancient chakra within the sphere, recognizing it, resonating with it, reaching for it even as Kazama's technique tried to intercept the connection. You can't control it, Naruto managed through gritted teeth. The Supreme Rasengan requires Uzumaki blood. A theory I intend to disprove, Kazama replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained his complex technique. Blood is just a medium for chakra. With the right seals, the right preparation, blood becomes irrelevant. The crystal sphere began to crack as the chakra within it responded to Naruto's presence. Tendrils of ancient power, pure Uzumaki chakra preserved from Uzushio's last days, reached out toward him. But Kazama's reversal technique was there to intercept, attempting to redirect the flow into his own body. Naruto felt his consciousness being pulled along with his chakra, drawn into a space between himself, the sphere, and Kazama. In this strange in-between state, he suddenly understood what was happening with perfect clarity. The Supreme Rasengan wasn't just a technique, it was a state of being, a perfect chord harmony of all the spiral patterns within an Uzumaki's chakra network. The sphere contained the template, the ideal form that served as a guide for achieving this harmony. And Kazama's attempt to steal it was creating a dangerous instability, like trying to force two repelling magnets together. Stop, Naruto shouted, both aloud and within the chakra space they now shared. You'll destroy the shrine, you'll kill us all. But Kazama was beyond reason, his eyes wild with the power flowing through him. I can contain it. I've prepared for this moment my entire life. The crystal sphere shattered completely, releasing the ancient chakra in a blinding flash. Naruto felt the template flood into him, awakening the final dormant patterns in his blood. But simultaneously, Kazama's technique pulled at the knowledge, creating a tug of war that threatened to tear the very fabric of chakra around them. In that critical moment, Naruto made a choice. Rather than fighting Kazama's pull directly, he relaxed into it, allowing his chakra to flow toward the man, but on his own terms. He took control of the spiral patterns, guiding them into a form that Kazama's body could theoretically accept. But with a critical difference. You want the Supreme Rasengan. Naruto projected into their shared chakra space. Then take it. But take it whole, not corrupted. He released the full template of the Tekken. IQ. Not the reverse-engineered version Kazama was trying to create, but the true form as it existed in Uzumaki blood. The pure, clockwise spiral pattern flooded into Kazama, overwhelming his attempts to convert it to his own counterclockwise nature. Kazama screamed as the contradictory chakra filled him. His body convulsed, red and blue energy crackling around him like lightning. The seals on the floor began to burn out, unable to contain the massive energy discharge. What have you done? He gasped, falling to his knees. Gave you what you wanted, Naruto replied, finding himself able to move again as the chakra drain ceased. But your body can't handle the true form of the technique. No one without Uzumaki blood could. The shrine began to shake, dust and small stones falling from the domed ceiling. The barrier separating Hinata from them collapsed as its power source. Kazama himself faltered. We need to leave now, Hinata urged, rushing to Naruto's side. The whole structure is becoming unstable. Naruto looked at Kazama, who was still on his knees, chakra burning through his system like a virus his body couldn't fight. We can't leave him. Despite everything the man had done, Naruto couldn't abandon him to die in the collapsing shrine. He moved to Kazama's side, preparing to help him escape. But Kazama looked up with a bitter smile, his swirling red eyes now shot through with blue spiral patterns. Too late for me, Uzumaki. My body is rejecting the chakra. But I've seen it, felt it, the Supreme Rasengan. Worth everything. The floor beneath him cracked, water beginning to seep through. The maelstrom above was reclaiming its territory. Go, Kazama urged with unexpected lucidity. What I sought, it's yours by right. Use it better than I would have. Hinata pulled at Naruto's arm. We have seconds, not minutes. With a final look at his defeated enemy, Naruto turned and ran. They sprinted back through the octagonal chamber, across the circular hall with its historical mosaics, and into the flooded tunnel. Behind them, the sound of collapsing stonework grew louder. Water was now flowing into the tunnel from the shrine, the current growing stronger as more of the structure failed. They fought against it, pushing toward the entrance shaft where they had entered. There, Hinata pointed ahead to the vertical shaft, now a column of swirling water. As the maelstrom above reconnected with the sea floor. How do we get up? Naruto shouted over the roar of water. Together, Hinata took his hand. Combine your spiral chakra with my rotation technique. Understanding immediately, Naruto channeled his chakra as Hinata began the motions of the Hyuga's rotation technique. Their energies merged, creating a protected spiral column that shot upward through the shaft, carrying them with it. They erupted from the bottom of the maelstrom into the heart of the vortex itself. Without the calming effect of the markers, the whirlpool had returned to its full, terrifying power. Hold on to me, Naruto called, forming a hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A chain of clones appeared, linking hands to form a living rope that extended up through the spiral of the maelstrom. With Hinata holding tightly to him, Naruto began to climb the clone chain, fighting against the immense centrifugal force of the whirlpool. Below them, the shrine entrance collapsed completely, sealing whatever remained of its secrets, and Kazama, beneath tons of rock and the eternal spiral of water. They reached the surface just as the last clone was about to dispel, finding Thames. Elves flung clear of the maelstrom onto the churning sea beyond its influence. Using the last of their strength to walk on the water's surface, they made their way to the nearest shoreline, collapsing onto a rocky beach in exhaustion. We made it, Naruto gasped, lying on his back and staring up at the morning sky. The shrine, Hinata asked, equally breathless. Gone. Sealed away again. Naruto closed his eyes, feeling the warm pulse in his chest. Stronger now, steadier, complete. But not before it gave me what I needed. The Supreme Rasengan. Yes, but not just the technique, understanding. Naruto opened his eyes, turning to look at Hinata. The Uzumaki weren't feared just for their sealing techniques or longevity. They understood something fundamental about chakra that others had forgotten. that it's not just a tool or a weapon, but a living force that connects everything. He held up his hand, effortlessly forming a Rasengan unlike any he had created before. Within the familiar blue sphere, intricate patterns swirled in perfect harmony, spirals within spirals, each enhancing the others, creating a technique of extraordinary beauty and complexity. The Supreme Rasengan isn't just powerful, he said softly. It's alive, in a way. It can adapt, change, respond to the user's intent. It's why Kazama could never have mastered it. He wanted to control it, to bend it to his will. But that's not how it works. Hinata watched the technique with awe, her Byakugan activating automatically to better perceive its complexity. It's beautiful. Naruto let the technique dissipate. And dangerous. If it can rewrite chakra pathways, change someone's very nature as a ninja, that's not something to use lightly. Is that why the Uzumaki hid it away? Hinata asked. I think so. Not because they were afraid of others having it, but because they were afraid of what others would do with it. Naruto sat up slowly, looking out at the great maelstrom still churning in the distance. Quote, they understood that with great power comes great responsibility. The sound of approaching footsteps made them turn. Kakashi and Sakura were running toward them along the beach, concern evident in their expressions. You're alive, Sakura exclaimed, dropping to her knees beside them and immediately beginning to check them for injuries. When the markers failed and the maelstrom closed, we thought. We almost didn't make it. Naruto admitted. The shrine collapsed. Kazama is gone. Gone as in escaped. Kakashi asked sharply. Gone as in dead, Naruto clarified. He tried to take the Supreme Rasengan for himself. But his body couldn't handle it. And the technique itself. Kakashi's visible eye studied Naruto carefully. Naruto met his sensei's gaze steadily. I have it. The knowledge, the ability, it's part of me now. Part of my bloodline awakening. A heavy silence fell among them, broken only by the distant roar of the maelstrom and the gentle lapping of waves on the shore. We should return to the village. Kakashi finally said. Rest, recover, and then head back to Konoha. Lady Tsunade will want a full report. As they made their way back to Nagale, Naruto found himself deep in thought. The awakening of his Uzumaki bloodline had given him more than just new techniques, it had connected him to a heritage he had barely known existed. The warm pulse in his chest was a constant reminder of this connection. This legacy that was now his to carry forward. But with this legacy came questions. How would this new power affect his dream of becoming Hokage? How would the village react to learning one of their ninja possessed a technique that could potentially rewrite the very nature of chakra? And what of the other Uzumaki descendants scattered across the world? Did they deserve to know about their heritage too? These were questions for another day. For now, Naruto was content to have found a piece of himself that had been missing, to understand a little more about where he came from, and perhaps where he was going. The blood remembers, even when the mind forgets. And his blood had finally awakened to its true potential. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Trials of Mastery. The forest outside Konoha was eerily silent, as if the wildlife sensed the immense chakra concentration and wisely kept their distance. Dawn light filtered through the canopy, illuminating a small clearing where Naruto Uzumaki stood alone. Eyes closed in deep concentration. 3 weeks had passed since the mission to Nagale and the discovery of his Uzumaki heritage. 3 weeks of intensive training, study, and adjustment to the awakened powers flowing through his veins. 3 weeks of keeping the full extent of those powers largely to himself. The warm pulse in his chest, now a familiar presence, quickened as Naruto gathered his chakra. In his right palm, a Rasengan formed without the need for shadow clones, its swirling patterns more complex than the technique he had used for years. This was no chi yet the Supreme Rasengan revealed in the underwater shrine, but an evolution of his signature technique, more stable, more efficient, and considerably more powerful. With a swift motion, Naruto thrust the Rasengan forward, targeting a boulder 20 feet away. Instead of dissipating when it left his hand, the spiraling sphere shot across the distance like a projectile, maintaining its rotation and form until it slammed into the stone. The boulder didn't merely crack, it collapsed into perfectly spiral-patterned fragments, as if the very structure of the rock had been reorganized before breaking apart. Naruto lowered his hand, analyzing the results with a critical eye. Better, he murmured to himself. But still not precise enough. The goal wasn't destruction. Any powerful technique could achieve that. The true potential of his awakened abilities lay in their precision, their capacity to affect chakra and matter at a fundamental level. Destruction was easy. Controlled transformation was the challenge. That was impressive. A voice called from the edge of the clearing. Naruto turned to see Kakashi emerging from the trees, his casual posture belying the keen assessment in his visible eye. "Kakashi-sensei." Naruto acknowledged with a respectful nod. "I didn't sense you approach." "I wasn't trying to hide," Kakashi replied, which told Naruto he had been deeply absorbed in his training. Normally, he would have detected his former teacher's chakra signature easily. "Lady Tsunade wants to see you," Kakashi continued, approaching the remains of the boulder to examine the spiral pattern etched into each fragment. "The council has made a decision regarding your situation." Naruto's expression sobered. Upon their return from the Nagale mission, he had provided a full report on everything that had happened: the shrine, Kazama, and his awakened Uzumaki abilities. The revelation of a technique that could potentially rewrite chakra networks had understandably raised concerns among Konoha's leadership. "They're not going to try to seal my abilities, are they?" Naruto asked, only half joking. Kakashi's eye crinkled in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. "Not quite, though I believe restrictions may be involved." Naruto nodded, unsurprised. He had expected something like this. Power of this magnitude would naturally come with oversight, especially in a village street. Ill recovering from the trauma of the Nine Tails attack years ago. "I'll clean up here and head to the Hokage Tower," he said, gathering his scattered equipment. Kakashi watched him for a moment. "How are you handling it, Naruto?" Truthfully, the question made Naruto pause. Few had asked how he felt about these changes, most being more concerned with what he could do than how it affected him personally. "It's overwhelming sometimes," he admitted. "Like having a second heartbeat, a second instinct that wasn't there before. But also familiar, somehow. Like recognizing a place you've only seen in dreams." "The blood remembers," Kakashi quoted from Naruto's report. "Exactly." Naruto closed his pack and straightened. "It doesn't feel like something foreign I'm trying to control. It feels like something that was always part of me. Just sleeping." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. "Just be careful not to lose yourself in it. New power can be intoxicating, especially when it connects to something as personal as heritage." "I won't," Naruto promised, appreciating his teacher's concern. "That's why I've been out here every morning, not just practicing techniques, but learning to integrate this part of myself with who I already am." Quote. Together, they made their way back toward the village, the forest gradually coming back to life around them as they left the training area. The early morning streets of Konoha were beginning to fill with villagers starting their day, shopkeepers raising shutters, children rushing to the academy, ninjas reporting for missions. Many nodded respectfully to Naruto as he passed. His role in the pain attack and subsequent events had elevated his standing in the village considerably, transforming him from pariah to hero in the public eye. Yet he could sense an undercurrent of wariness in some of their greetings now. Word had spread, as it always did in a village of ninjas, that the Uzumaki Jinchuriki had awakened to new, potentially dangerous abilities. Naruto pretended not to notice, maintaining his customary cheerful demeanor as they approached the Hokage Tower. Inside, they were immediately directed to Tsunade's office, where they found not only the Hokage but also Shizune, Shikamaru, and somewhat surprisingly, Hinata. "Good, you're here," Tsunade said, looking up from the document she'd been reviewing. "We can begin." Naruto's gaze met Hinata's briefly. Since returning from the Nagale mission, they had seen each other only occasionally, mostly when Hinata used her Byakugan to help monitor the changes in his chakra network. There had been little opportunity to discuss the deeper implications of what they had experienced together beneath the Great Maelstrom. "Am I in trouble?" Naruto asked, only half joking as he took the seat Tsunade indicated. "Not trouble," the Hokage replied, steepling her fingers, "but we need to establish parameters for your continued development of these Uzumaki techniques. The Supreme Rasengan, in particular, presents both an asset and a potential liability for Konoha." Shikamaru, who had been leaning against the wall, straightened. "I've analyzed your mission reports and Hinata's observations of your chakra network. Based on what we understand, The Supreme Rasengan could theoretically be used to permanently alter an opponent's ability to use chakra, essentially ending their career as a ninja. That's one application, Naruto acknowledged. But it's more versatile than that. It can be calibrated to create temporary effects, reorganize chakra flow rather than disrupt it, even potentially heal certain types of chakra damage. Which is precisely why we've come to our decision, Tsunade said. The council initially wanted to classify this as a forbidden technique and prohibit its development altogether. Naruto tensed, but Tsunade raised a hand to forestall his objection. I argued against that approach, she continued. Sealing away knowledge rarely works in the long term, and your bloodline. Awakening isn't something that can simply be switched off. Instead, we're implementing a structured training and oversight program. She slid a folder across her desk toward him. These are the guidelines. Essentially, you'll continue developing your abilities under supervision, with regular evaluations and specific restrictions on when and how the more advanced techniques can be deployed in the field. Naruto opened the folder, skimming its contents. The restrictions were significant but not unreasonable, primarily focused on ensuring the Supreme Rasengan and similar high-level techniques were used only in specific threat scenarios. With proper authorization, Hinata has agreed to serve as your primary training partner, Tsunade added. Her Byakugan allows her to monitor your chakra network during practice, helping to ensure the techniques develop safely. Additionally, Kakashi will oversee the overall program, with Shikamaru consulting on strategic applications. Naruto glanced at Hinata, who offered a small, encouraging smile. Working closely with her would be interesting. Their shared experience at the shrine had created a connection between them that he was still trying to understand. I have questions, he said, returning his attention to Tsunade. I'd be concerned if you didn't, she replied dryly. First, am I still cleared for regular missions? Or am I being sidelined for training? You'll continue taking missions appropriate to your rank, Tsunade assured him. In fact, I'm assigning you one today. But missions will be selected partly based on opportunities to safely test your developing abilities in the field. Naruto nodded, relieved. Being confined to the village for training would have driven him crazy, regardless of how important that training might be. Second question, he continued. What about other Uzumaki descendants? Are we making any effort to locate them, to share what we've learned? This had been weighing on his mind since Nagale. How many others like Mito were out there, with fragments of Uzumaki heritage and knowledge, unaware that they were part of something larger? Tsunade's expression softened slightly. We've begun discreetly aching out through our intelligence networks. If there are other significant Uzumaki bloodline carriers, we want to find them before someone like Kazama does. Good, Naruto said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Last question. The mission you mentioned, what is it? An escort assignment to the Land of Valleys, Tsunade replied, switching to a more businesslike tone. A team of research. ERS needs protection while they investigate unusual chakra phenomena in a remote region. Given your developing sensory abilities, you're uniquely qualified. The Land of Valleys. Naruto frowned. That's near the former Land of Whirlpools, isn't it? Adjacent to it, Shikamaru confirmed. Which is why we suspect the phenomena might be related to your clan's legacy. The researchers don't know T's connection. They believe they're studying natural chakra anomalies. So I'm there both as protection and to investigate any possible Uzumaki connection, Naruto summarized. Precisely. Tsunade handed him another folder. Hinata will accompany you, along with Sakura for medical support. Depart tomorrow morning. The mission details are all there. Naruto accepted the folder, his mind already analyzing the possibilities. A chance to explore more of his heritage while testing his abilities in the field seemed ideal. There's one more thing, Tsunade said, her tone growing more serious. While you were training this morning, we received intelligence that may be connected to your situation. She nodded to Shikamaru, who activated a wall display showing a map of the northern Fire Country border. 3 villages in this region have reported incidents involving individuals with unusual chakra signatures, he explained. Witnesses describe red spiral patterns visible in the air during these encounters. Naruto straightened, instantly alert. Like Kazama's techniques. Similar, but not identical according to the reports, Shikamaru replied. More importantly, 2 of the incidents involved Attempted abductions, specifically targeting individuals with known or suspected Uzumaki ancestry. Kazama had accomplices, Hinata asked, speaking up for the first time. Unlikely, Kakashi interjected. Based on your description of his personality and methods, he was too possessive of his research to share it widely. This appears to be a different group with similar interests. The Cipher Organization, Naruto said grimly, remembering the intelligence they'd gathered in Nagale. Kazama mentioned them, collectors of bloodline abilities. That's our assessment as well, Tsunade confirmed. While your primary mission is the escort assignment, keep alert for any signs of Cipher activity. If they're hunting Uzumaki descendants, you may be a primary target. The meeting concluded shortly after, with arrangements made for Naruto and Hinata to begin formal training sessions later that afternoon. As they left the Hokage Tower, Naruto found himself walking alongside Hinata, a comfortable silence between them. So, he finally said as they reached the street, training partners. Is that acceptable? Hinata asked, a hint of her old shyness surfacing. I know you usually train with Kakashi-sensei or Sakura. It's perfect, Naruto assured her quickly. Your Byakugan has already been incredibly helpful. And after what we went through at the shrine. He trailed off, not quite sure how to articulate the connection he felt. I understand, Hinata said softly. That experience, it changed something between us. Naruto nodded, relieved she felt it too. Exactly. It's like you've seen a part of me that no one else has. And somehow that makes it easier to work with these new abilities when you're around. A faint blush colored Hinata's cheeks, but her gaze remained steady. I'm honored to help, Naruto. Your awakening is extraordinary. Not just the power itself, but what it means for you to connect with your heritage. They reached a crossroads where their paths would diverge, Hinata toward the Hyuga compound. Naruto toward his apartment. Training Field 3 at 2. Naruto suggested. We can start working through some of the exercises in Tsunade's program. I'll be there, Hinata promised with a smile that seemed somehow both shy and determined, a combination Naruto was beginning to find rather appealing. As they parted ways, Naruto felt the warm pulse in his chest quicken momentarily. His Uzumaki chakra seemed to respond to Hinata in ways he didn't fully understand, another mystery to explore as his abilities continued to develop. Training Field 3 was empty when Naruto arrived that afternoon, giving him time to prepare. He laid out several scrolls Tsunade had provided, detailed analyses of his chakra patterns based on Hinata's previous observations, along with suggested exercises for improving his control. The goal for today's session was relatively straightforward. Refine his ability to project spiral chakra at a distance while maintaining precise control over its effects. The ranged Rasengan he had demonstrated that morning was a step in the right direction, but still lacked the finesse required for the more sophisticated applications. He was reviewing the technique parameters when he sensed Hinata's approach. Her chakra signature had become increasingly familiar to him since his sensory abilities had awakened. Right on time, he called without looking up. Actually, I'm 2 minutes early, Hinata replied with a gentle teasing note in her voice as she entered the clearing. She carried a small pack that probably contained medical supplies, ND monitoring equipment, standard precautions for high-level chakra training. Naruto grinned. Punctuality was never my strong suit. You've improved, she observed, setting down her pack and kneeling beside him to examine the scrolls. Are these the exercises Lady Tsunade recommended? Yeah, mostly focused on projection and precision control. Naruto pointed to a diagram showing spiral chakra patterns extending from a central core. The idea is to maintain the same complexity at a distance that I can achieve in direct contact. Hinata activated her Byakugan, studying the diagram and then Naruto's chakra network. I see. Your spirals naturally want to simplify as they extend outward. We need to counteract that tendency. She stood and moved to the center of the clearing. Let me demonstrate something first. It might help. Curious, Naruto watched as Hinata assumed the traditional gentle fist stance. She began a series of movements that he recognized as the 8 trigrams 64 palms technique. But with a subtle difference. As her hands moved through the precise striking patterns, he could see, even without the Byakugan, that her chakra was forming tight spiral extensions around her fingertips. You've incorporated spiral patterns into your family technique? He asked, Impressed, Hinata completed the form before answering. Not exactly. The Hyuga techniques already use A4M of rotation. I've just been experimenting with making that rotation more efficient by studying your chakra patterns. That's brilliant, Naruto said, genuinely amazed at her innovation. You're adapting what you've observed in me to enhance your own style. A faint blush colored her cheeks at the praise. It's still experimental, but it illustrates what I think might help you. The key isn't pushing your spiral patterns outward, but extending your awareness along with them. She approached and knelt beside him again. When I strike with the gentle fist, I'm not just sending chakra into the target. I'm extending my perception through that chakra, seeing the pathway as I affect it. I think your projection techniques might improve if you approach them the same way. Naruto considered this, relating it to his experiences in Nagale. Like when I connected to those stone markers, I wasn't just charging them with chakra, I was establishing a kind of awareness through them. Exactly, Hinata nodded, pleased he had understood. Your Uzumaki abilities seem to thrive on connection and awareness, not just power. With this new perspective, they began the first exercise. Naruto formed a basic Rasengan in his palm, then slowly extended his arm away from his body. Traditionally, this would have caused the technique to destabilize almost immediately. Now, with his awakened abilities, he could maintain it at arm's length. But the complexity of the spiral patterns still diminished the further it moved from his body. Try to feel the spirals, Hinata suggested, her Byakugan active as she monitored his chakra flow. Not just control them, but sense them, as if they're an extension of your awareness. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the warm pulse in his chest and allowing that sensation to flow outward along with his chakra. The difference was subtle but immediate. The Rasengan stabilized, its internal patterns maintaining their complexity even as he extended his arm fully. That's it, Hinata encouraged. Now try to project it forward while maintaining that awareness. With a careful motion, Naruto pushed the Rasengan away from his palm. It hovered in the air before him, still spinning perfectly. Unlike his earlier attempt in the forest, this wasn't a projectile, it was a sustained technique existing independently of direct physical contact. Remarkable, Hinata breathed, her Byakugan taking in the intricate chakra flows. The spiral patterns are maintaining their integrity perfectly. Emboldened, Naruto tried to move the floating Rasengan further away, guiding it toward a training post 20 feet distant. The technique wobbled slightly but remained stable as it traveled across the clearing. Now for the hard part, he muttered, concentrating intensely. Precision application. When the Rasengan reached the post, instead of simply crashing into it with destructive force, Naruto attempted to modulate its effect. He visualized the spiral patterns boring into the wood in a controlled, selective pattern. Not to destroy, but to remodel. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The Rasengan connected with the post and began spinning against its surface, chakra spirals extending into the wood like drills. But then Naruto's concentration slipped, his awareness of the distant technique faltering. The Rasengan suddenly destabilized, releasing its energy in an uncontrolled LED burst that shattered the upper portion of the post. Damn it, Naruto muttered, lowering his hand. Lost it at the critical moment. That was still impressive, Hinata said, deactivating her Byakugan and blinking as her vision readjusted to normal. You maintained projection much longer than before, and the initial application was starting to work. Naruto wiped sweat from his brow, surprise. By how taxing the exercise had been, not in terms of raw chakra consumption, which he had in abundance, but in the mental focus required to maintain awareness at a distance. It's like trying to feel with fingers that are 20 feet long. He explained, I can push the chakra out there easily enough, but keeping the fine control is the challenge. That makes sense, Hinata nodded. It's similar to how we train to extend Byakugan perception. The further you push your awareness, the more focus it requires to maintain clarity. They continued practicing for the next 2 hours, working through variations of the projection exercise. By the end of the session, Naruto could reliably maintain a projected Rasengan at distances up to 30 feet, though precise application at the target remained challenging. As the afternoon light began to fade, they gathered the scrolls and prepared to conclude for the day. Same time tomorrow, Naruto asked, rolling up the last scroll. Hinata nodded, then hesitated. Actually, Would you like to get some dinner? We could discuss the mission parameters for tomorrow while we eat. The invitation surprised Naruto, though pleasantly so. That sounds great, Ichiraku. I was thinking somewhere a bit quieter, Hinata suggested. There's a new tea house near the eastern gate that serves excellent yakitori. Perfect. Naruto finished packing his equipment. I should probably clean up first. Though, this training got more intense than I expected. Me too, Hinata agreed. Meet you there in an hour. They parted ways, Naruto heading back to his apartment. Tea with a lightness in his step that wasn't entirely due to the successful training session. As he showered and changed into fresh clothes, he found himself looking forward to the dinner with unexpected anticipation. The tea house proved to be a good choice, tucked away on a side street, with private booths and subtle lighting that created an atmosphere of calm intimacy. Naruto arrived to find Hinata already seated, her dark hair still damp from her own shower, dressed in a simple lavender yukata rather than her usual ninja attire. This place is nice, he commented as he slid into the seat across from her. I don't think I've been here before. It opened while you were away training with Jiraiya, Hinata explained. Kurenai-sensei introduced me to it. They're very good about accommodating privacy for ninja who want to discuss missions without being overheard. As if to demonstrate her point, a server approached and activated a subtle privacy seal on their table before taking their order. A standard practice in establishments that catered to Konoha's shinobi population. Once they were alone, Naruto pulled out the mission folder Tsunade had provided. So, escort duty to the Land of Valleys. Seemed straightforward enough on the surface. But with potential Uzumaki connections, Hinata added, leaning forward to examine the documents. And possible cipher organization activity in the region. Exactly. Not as simple as it first appears. Naruto studied the map included in the briefing. The research team is investigating chakra anomalies in this valley system here, less than 100 miles from where Uzushiogakure once stood. Do you think there could be more shrines? Like the one beneath the maelstrom? Possibly. Naruto tapped the map thoughtfully. The Uzumaki were known for their sealing techniques. It makes sense they would have multiple secure locations for their knowledge, especially if they anticipated their village might fall. Their food arrived, skewers of perfectly grilled chicken and vegetables, along with steamed rice and a pot of fragrant tea. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before returning to the mission discussion. The research team, what do we know about them? Hinata asked, pouring tea for both of them. Naruto flipped through the documents. 4 scientists from the Fire Country Institute of Chakra Studies. They've been tracking unusual energy readings in the region for several months. Initially they thought it was just natural chakra phenomena, but the patterns have become more organized recently, suggesting possible human origin. Or awakening seals, Hinata suggested, like the markers we used to access the shrine. That's my guess too. Naruto sipped his tea, appreciating its subtle flavor. Something may be activating after lying dormant for decades. Quote, they continued discussing mission strategies as they ate, developing contingency plans for various scenarios they might encounter. The conversation flowed easily between them, professional analysis occasionally giving way to more personal observations and even light humor. You've changed, Hinata noted during a lull in their planning. Since Nagale, I mean. Naruto raised an eyebrow. In what way? She considered her answer carefully. You seem more centered, more deliberate in your approach to things. Not that you've lost your spontaneity, she added quickly. But there's a new layer of, I'm not sure what to call it, awareness, Naruto suggested. That's how it feels from the inside. Like I'm more conscious of connections, between actions and consequences. Between myself and others, between different aspects of chakra. Hinata nodded. That describes it well. Your chakra reflects it too. The patterns are more harmonious now, less chaotic. What about you? Naruto asked, genuinely curious. How did our experience at the shrine affect you? The question seemed to surprise her. Me, but I didn't undergo any awakening. Maybe not of bloodline abilities. Naruto acknowledged. But experiences like that change people. I've noticed differences in how you carry yourself, how you speak. More confidence, less hesitation. A faint blush colored Hinata's cheeks. But she didn't look away as she might have in the past. I suppose facing death together beneath an ancient whirlpool does put everyday anxieties in perspective. Naruto laughed. That's one way to look at it. But you're right, she continued more seriously. Something changed for me in that shrine. Watching you embrace your heritage, seeing you make that impossible choice. To give Kazama what he wanted but in a way he couldn't handle, it made me reflect on my own path. Your own path, as a Hyuga, as a ninja, as myself. Hinata's fingers traced the rim of her teacup. Our clan is defined by tradition, by rigid expectations. But what if those traditions are just incomplete? What if they could evolve, integrate new understanding? Like your spiral adaptation of the gentle fist. Naruto realized. Exactly. I've started to see possibilities I never considered before. Her pale eyes met his directly. You've always inspired that in people, Naruto. But now, with your awakening, it's as if you're embodying it in a new way. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they finished their meal, but Naruto found himself reflecting on Hinata's words long after they had parted for the evening. The idea that his personal journey might inspire others to rethink their own paths added a dimension of responsibility to his awakening that he hadn't fully considered before. As he prepared for bed, reviewing the mission details one final time, the warm pulse in his chest seemed to resonate with this new awareness. His Uzumaki heritage wasn't just about or techniques. It was about connections, legacy, and the ripple effects of personal transformation. Tomorrow's mission would be his first real field test of these evolving abilities and perspectives. Whatever they encountered in the land of valleys, Naruto felt more prepared to face it than he would have just weeks ago, not just because of his awakened powers, but because of the growing clarity about their purpose and meaning in his life. Dawn found Team Kakashi assembled at Konoha's main gate, finalizing preparations for their journey. Though Kakashi himself wouldn't be joining them, he had another assignment directly from the Hokage. He had come to see them off and provide last-minute guidance. Remember, your primary objective is protecting the research team, he reminded them. Investigation of possible Uzumaki connections is secondary. We understand, Sakura assured him, adjusting her medical pack. Unlike Naruto and Hinata, she hadn't been briefed on all the details regarding Uzumaki bloodline awakening. Just enough to know that Naruto was developing new abilities related to his heritage and that the mission might connect to this development. The researchers will meet you at Tanzaku Town tomorrow. Kakashi continued. From there, it's a 3-day journey to the valley system they're investigating. Naruto nodded, mentally reviewing the route they would take. Any update on the Cypher organization sightings? Nothing concrete, Kakashi replied. But intelligence suggests increased activity throughout the region. Stay alert. With final checks complete, they set out, maintaining a steady pace through the forest surrounding Konoha. As they traveled, Naruto found himself unconsciously extending his chakra senses outward, scanning their surroundings in a way that felt newly natural to him. Your sensory range has increased, Hinata observed as they ran side by side, her Byakugan momentarily active. The spiral patterns extend much further than before. I've been practicing, Naruto confirmed. It's getting easier to maintain awareness over larger areas. Useful for a mission like this, Sakura commented from his other side. Between your sensing and Hinata's Byakugan, we should have excellent perimeter coverage. They made good time, reaching a small way station by evening where they could rest before the final stretch to Tanzaku Town. As Sakura went to arrange accommodations, Naruto and Hinata took the opportunity to continue their training, finding a secluded clearing behind the inn. Let's try something different, Naruto suggested as they settled into position. Instead of projecting a formed Rasengan, I want to try extending spiral patterns directly, more subtle, less power-intensive. Hinata activated her Byakugan, like chakra threads, but with spiral properties. Exactly. If I can master this, it might allow for more delicate manipulations at a distance. The exercise proved challenging in new ways. Creating chakra threads was a basic technique taught to all ninja, but infusing them with spiral patterns while maintaining their integrity required precision. Naruto was still developing. His first attempts resulted in visible blue strands that wavered and broke after extending only a few feet. You're overthinking it, Hinata observed after his fifth failed attempt. You're trying to consciously control every aspect of the spiral pattern. Isn't that the point? Naruto asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Not necessarily. When you formed the Rasengan yesterday, the spirals organized themselves once you extended your awareness. Try the same approach. Focus on where you want the chakra to go, not how it should be structured. Taking her advice, Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated on the warm pulse in his chest. Rather than trying to dictate the spiral patterns, he simply allowed his chakra to flow outward along the path he envisioned, trusting it to maintain its natural organization. That's it, Hinata said softly. They're forming perfectly now. Naruto opened his eyes to see nearly invisible threads of spiral-patterned chakra extending from his fingertips, reaching all the way across the clearing to a SM. All boulder he had selected as his target. Unlike the Rasengan, these threads carried minimal power. They were essentially extensions of his chakra awareness, allowing him to sense the boulder's compos. Ishin as if he were touching it directly. I can feel the minerals in the stone, he said with wonder. The different densities, the tiny cracks and fissures beneath the surface. Can you affect it? Hinata asked. Not destroy, but change in some small way. Focusing his concentration, Naruto attempted to direct the spiral patterns into one of the surface cracks he had sensed. The challenge was immense, like trying to thread a needle from 30 feet away using only his mind to guide the thread. But gradually, he felt the crack widening slightly as his chakra spiraled into it, encouraging the stone to separate along its natural fault line. With a soft click, a small fragment of the boulder detached and fell to the ground. Incredible, Hinata breathed. Such precision at that distance. Naruto released the technique, feeling a deep satisfaction that had little to do with power and everything to do with control. This was the true potential of his awakened abilities, not overwhelming force, but unprecedented finesse in chakra manipulation. They continued practicing until the light faded completely, by which time Naruto could reliably extend chakra threads to distances of 50 feet or more, with enough sensitivity to identify and affect minute details in his targets. The applications for both combat and non-combat situations were immense, from disabling traps to performing delicate medical adjustments without direct contact. When they finally returned to the inn, they found Sakura waiting with dinner prepared and a curious expression on her face. Productive training, she asked as they washed up and joined her at the small table. Very, Naruto confirmed, suddenly ravenous after the chakra expenditure. Sakura studied him as they ate, her medical training giving her insights even without Hinata's Byakugan. Your chakra signature has been changing gradually since Nagale, she observed. More organized, more deliberate somehow. Is that related to what you discovered about your clan? Naruto exchanged a glance with Hinata, unsure how much he should share. Tsunade hadn't explicitly restricted him from discussing his awakening with teammates, but had emphasized Rasengan regarding the full extent of the Supreme Rasengan's capabilities. Yes, he finally answered. My Uzumaki heritage included certain chakra traits that have been awakening since our mission. I'm still learning to control them. Hence all the private training with Hinata. Sakura nodded, seeming satisfied with the explanation. Well, whatever it is, it seems to be a positive development. Your chakra feels healthier than I've ever sensed it, even the Nine Tails influence appears more integrated than before. This observation caught Naruto's attention. He hadn't considered how his awakening might be affecting his relationship with the tailed beast sealed within him. The Nine Tails had been unusually quiet since Nagale, neither interfering with nor commenting on his developing abilities. That's interesting, he said thoughtfully. The Uzumaki were known for their special relationship with the tailed beasts. Maybe there's a connection there too. They retired early that night, needing rest before meeting the research team the following day. But as Naruto lay in his futon, staring at the ceiling, he found himself reaching inward, toward the sealed space where the Nine Tails dwelled within him. The familiar sewer-like mindscape materialized around him, but with subtle differences. The usual murky water underfoot now formed tiny spiral patterns as he walked, and the oppressive atmosphere seemed somehow lighter, more balanced. He approached the massive gate that contained the Nine Tails, finding the fox already awake and watching him with those enormous, slitted eyes. So the Uzumaki blood finally awakens. The Nine Tails rumbled, its massive form shifting behind the bars. I wondered when you would come to discuss it. You know about the Uzumaki bloodline? Naruto asked, though he wasn't entirely surprised. The fox had existed for centuries, had been sealed within his mother and before her, Mito Uzumaki. Of course I know, the Nine-Tails replied with a snort. That sent ripples through the spiraling water. I was imprisoned by your kind long before you were born. The spiral seal that binds me is Uzumaki work, as were all the most effective methods of containing the tailed beasts. Naruto moved closer to the gate, studying the seal that kept it closed. For the first time, he could see the intricate spiral patterns woven into its structure, far more complex than he had ever realized. The Uzumaki were feared for their sealing techniques, he said. But that's not all they could do, was it? The Nine-Tails regarded him with what might have been reluctant respect. No, their spiral chakra allowed them to harmonize conflicting energies, to find balance where others saw only opposition. It made them dangerous to those who thrived on discord. Like the Kazama clan, Naruto observed. Parasites, the fox growled dismissively. They sought to invert what they could not create themselves. But you, its enormous eyes narrowed, examining Naruto carefully. You carry purer blood than even your mother did. The potential in you exceeds what the Uzumaki have manifested in generations. This revelation startled Naruto. Purer than my mother. How is that possible? Bloodlines work in mysterious ways, Kit. Sometimes they strengthen through mixing with other powerful lineages, sometimes they dilute. In your case, the Nine-Tails trailed off, seeming almost reluctant to continue. In my case, Naruto prompted. In your case, my presence may have been a catalyst, the fox finally admitted. My chakra, while corrosive to most humans, resonates with Uzumaki's spiral patterns. Your body has been adapting to me since birth, strengthening the very aspects of your bloodline that allow you to contain me. Naruto absorbed this information silently. The idea that the Nine-Tails, long seen as a burden and danger, might have actually enhanced his innate abilities was a profound shift in perspective. Is that why you've been quieter lately? He asked. Beck, my awakened chakra is affecting our connection. The fox made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perceptive, for once. Yes, your spiral chakra is not unpleasant to experience. It organizes the flow between us, makes the seal less confining without weakening its purpose. I find myself less inclined to fight against it. A harmony of energies, Naruto murmured, recalling what the fox had said about the Uzumaki's abilities. Don't mistake this for friendship, Kit, the Nine-Tails warned, though its tone lacked its usual menace. But perhaps, a more productive coexistence. As Naruto prepared to withdraw from the mindscape, the fox spoke again. One more thing. This cipher organization your Hokage mentioned, be wary. Groups that hunt bloodlines rarely have benevolent intentions. And your awakened state will shine like a beacon to those with the right sensory abilities. With that unexpected warning, Naruto returned to consciousness, finding himself back in the dim room of the Wayside Inn. The conversation with the Nine-Tails had given him much to consider, not least the revelation about his bloodline's apparent purity and its evolving relationship with the tailed beast sealed within him. He drifted into sleep with the warm pulse in his chest beating in a rhythm that, for the first time, seemed almost synchronized with the Nine-Tails' enormous heartbeat. Tanzaku Town greeted them with its usual bustling energy the following day, a mix of tourists, gamblers, merchants, and travelers creating a vibrant atmosphere that always reminded Naruto of his journeys with Jiraiya. They made their way to the designated meeting point, a respectable inn near the town's eastern edge where the research team had been staying while finalizing their equipment preparations. Dr. Mayuri Sato, the lead researcher, proved to be a middle-aged woman with keen eyes and an air of barely contained excitement about her work. She introduced her team, two younger scientists who specialized in chakra detection equipment and an older man who appeared to be a geographical expert, judging by the maps spread across his portion of the inn's common room. We're delighted to have Konoha Shinobi accompanying us, Sato said after introductions were complete. The phenomena we're studying have grown more unpredictable recently, and the terrain is challenging even without potential security concerns. What exactly are you hoping to discover? Naruto asked, genuinely curious about their research. The woman's eyes lit up at the question. Patterns in natural chakra flow that could explain why certain regions produce more shinobi with specific affinities. The land of valleys has unusually high concentrations of chakra in its geological formations, far beyond what's typically found in nature. And these concentrations have been increasing. Hinata inquired. Not just increasing, organizing, drive. Sato corrected. Natural chakra typically forms random distributions based on local flora, fauna, and geology. But what we're seeing in the target valley follows distinct patterns that suggest artificial influence. She unrolled a chart showing energy readings taken over several months. Even to Naruto's untrained eye, the progression was clear, from chaotic spikes to increasingly regular, spiral-shaped distributions. Spirals, he noted, meeting Hinata's gaze briefly. Interesting. Yes, exactly why we're so excited. The researcher agreed, misinterpreting his interest as purely scientific. Spiral chakra patterns are extremely rare in nature, usually requiring sophisticated manipulation techniques to maintain. The geographical expert, Dr. Hirano, joined the conversation, bringing one of his maps. The epicenter appears to be here. He indicated a narrow valley nestled between three larger ones. Local legends call it the sleeping dragon's spine, supposedly because the ridge formation resembles a dragon's back. Naruto studied the map carefully, noting the valley's relative position to the coastline and the former location of Uzushiogakure. The distance and orientation matched what might have been a logical outpost or way station for travelers between the hidden village and the interior of the continent. How long will the journey take from here? Sakura asked, already assessing potential medical needs for extended field work. 3 days if the weather holds, drive. Hirano replied. The first 2 days are easy travel along established roads, but the final approach requires navigating narrow passes that can become treacherous if it rains. They spent the remainder of the day reviewing the route, discussing contingency plans, and helping the researchers organize their equipment for efficient travel. The scientists had a considerable amount of specialized gear, sensing devices, recording instruments, and analysis tools that would require careful handling during the journey. By evening, all preparations were complete, and they agreed to depart at first light. The researchers retired to finalize their personal arrangements. Naruto took the opportunity to explore Tanzaku town briefly, partly to check for any signs of cipher organization activity and partly to clear his head before the mission's next phase. The warm pulse in his chest had been steadily growing stronger since they'd arrived in town, as if responding to something in the vicinity. It wasn't uncomfortable, but the sensation was definitely more pronounced than it had been in Konoha. He was passing a small shrine dedicated to local nature spirits when the pulse suddenly intensified. Pausing, Naruto approached the shrine more closely, examining its modest structure. Nothing about it appeared unusual, just a simple wooden building with traditional ornaments and offering plates. But as he moved toward the back of the shrine grounds, he noticed a stone marker partially hidden by overgrown bushes. Unlike the rest of the shrine's features, this stone was clearly ancient, weathered by centuries of exposure, with barely visible carvings on its surface. Kneeling beside it, Naruto cleared away some of the vegetation to reveal a faded spiral pattern carved into the stone, similar to but distinct from the Uzumaki clan crest. Without thinking, he placed his hand on the marking. The warm pulse in his chest immediately synchronized with something in the stone, creating a resonance that sent a clear image into his mind. A path leading from this exact spot toward the valleys they would be traveling to, marked by similar stones placed at regular intervals. A waymarker network, he murmured in realization. For Uzumaki travelers. The connection faded as he removed his hand, but the knowledge remained. This stone was part of an ancient system that had once guided clan members through these lands. Perhaps to hidden caches or safe houses along the route to Uzushio. Returning to the inn, Naruto found Hinata waiting in the common room, a cup of tea cooling before her as she reviewed their mission scrolls once more. You found something, she observed immediately, noticing the slight change in his expression. He nodded, taking the seat across from her and keeping his voice low. An Uzumaki waymarker at the shrine near the eastern edge of town. It connected to me when I touched it, showed me that there's a whole network of them leading toward our destination. The researchers in Eternal Chakra phenomena might be these markers activating, Hinata suggested, immediately grasping the implication. Exactly what I was thinking, Naruto agreed. But why now, after all these decades? What's triggering them? Hinata considered this. Perhaps you're awakening. If the markers respond to Uzumaki chakra, and you're the first with activated abilities to pass near them in generations. Maybe, Naruto conceded, but the timing doesn't quite work. According to the research data, the changes began months ago, before our Nagale mission. Then something else is calling to them, Hinata said softly. Or someone else. The implication hung between them, another Uzumaki descendant, perhaps, or someone who had found a way to simulate the bloodline's chakra signature. Either possibility raised further questions about what awaited them in the land of valleys. Morning brought clear skies and favorable conditions for beginning their journey. The research team, despite their civilian status, proved to be experienced travelers, maintaining a steady pace that would see them covering significant ground by nightfall. Dr. Sato walked alongside Naruto for much of the morning, her curiosity. Why about chakra theory making for engaging conversation? You have an unusual chakra signature, she noted after several hours of travel. I hope you don't mind my saying so, I've worked with many shinobi over the years. And I've developed something of an instinct for sensing distinctive patterns. Naruto glanced at her with new interest. You can sense chakra without specialized equipment. To a limited degree, she acknowledged. Nothing like a trained sensor ninja, but enough to notice outliers. Yours has a spiral quality I've rarely encountered, reminiscent of the patterns we've been tracking in the valleys. Interesting observation, Naruto replied carefully. I have some Uzumaki ancestry, which might explain the similarity. They were known for spiral-patterned chakra. Dr. Sato's eyes widened slightly. Uzumaki, the clan from the destroyed Uzushiogakure. That actually makes considerable sense given our readings. The land of valleys borders the former land of whirlpools, after all. Have you considered that your phenomena might be related to Uzushio artifacts or installations? Naruto asked, testing how she would respond to the suggestion. Artifacts, she repeated thoughtfully. We had assumed natural formations enhanced by residual chakra, but human-made structures could indeed produce the patterns we're observing. Especially if they were created by a clan with specialized chakra properties. The conversation continued along these lines, with Naruto carefully extracting information about the research team's observations while providing just enough context about the Uzumaki to guide drive. Sato's thinking without revealing the full extent of his personal connection. By midday, they had reached a river crossing that marked the border between the land of fire and the land of valleys. As they paused to rest and eat, Naruto felt the warm pulse in his chest responding to something nearby. Excusing himself, he wandered along the riverbank, following the sensation. Until he found another stone marker partially submerged in the water. This one was larger than the one in Tanzaku town, with more elaborate spiral patterns carved into its surface. He glanced back to ensure no one was watching before placing his hand on the stone. Immediately, the connection formed, stronger this time, with clearer images flowing into his mind. He saw not just the path ahead but glimpses of what awaited at its end. A structure built into the side of a mountain, its entrance marked by concentric spiral patterns similar to those found in the underwater shrine. As the vision faded, Naruto became aware of a presence behind him. He turned to find Hinata standing a respectful distance away, her Byakugan active. Another marker, she asked quietly. He nodded. Stronger than the last. It showed me our destination, some kind of facility built into the mountains of the Central Valley. The researcher's epicenter, Hinata noted. Did you see what's inside? No, just the entrance. But it's definitely Uzumaki construction. Naruto stood, brushing water from his hands. And something in there is waking up, activating these markers one by one. Hinata deactivated her Byakugan, looking troubled. We should be prepared for the possibility that we're not the only ones following this trail. If the Cipher organization is hunting Uzumaki connections, they might be heading for the same location. Naruto finished grimly. We'll need to be extra vigilant from here on. They rejoined the group, maintaining casual demeanors while exchanging meaningful glances with Sakura, who had picked up on their brief absence. As the journey resumed, Naruto extended his chakra senses further than before, scanning for any sign of pursuit or observation. The afternoon brought them into the first of the valleys, a wide, fertile expanse dotted with small farming communities. The locals regarded their party with curious but not unfriendly eyes, travelers were common enough here, particularly. Why research expeditions studying the region's unusual geography? They stopped for the night in one such community, arranging lodging in the village's modest inn. As the researchers set up equipment to take evening readings, Naruto, Hinata, and Sakura convened privately to discuss security arrangements. Something's changed in your chakras since this morning, Sakura observed, her medical training making her particularly sensitive to such shifts. Both of you seem alert in a way that goes beyond normal mission readiness. Naruto exchanged a glance with Hinata before deciding that Sakura deserved to know at least the basics of what they had discovered. We've found evidence that the chakra phenomena the researchers are studying might be related to my Uzumaki heritage, he explained. Specifically, a network of markers that seem to be activating, leading towards something in the Central Valley. Sakura's eyes widened slightly, like breadcrumbs on a trail. And you can sense them because of your bloodline. Exactly, Naruto confirmed. But if I can follow them, others might be able to as well, Sakura concluded. Hence the increased vigilance. We should establish a rotating watch tonight, Hinata suggested. And I'll use my Byakugan to scan the surrounding area periodically. They agreed on a schedule, with Naruto taking the first watch while the others rested. As the village settled into evening quiet, he positioned himself on the inn's roof, extending his senses outward while maintaining a visual watch on the approaches. For the first 2 hours, nothing disturbed the peaceful night. Then, just as he was preparing to wake Hinata for her shift, the warm pulse in his chest suddenly flared in warning. Simultaneously, he detected a disturbance in the chakra field surrounding the village, subtle but distinct. Like ripples spreading from a stone dropped in still water. Someone with considerable skill was moving toward them, attempting to mask their presence but causing minute disruptions in the natural energy flow. Naruto created a shadow clone to alert his teammates while maintaining his position, tracking the approaching presence. Whoever it was had stopped just beyond the village perimeter, seemingly hesitating or perhaps assessing the situation. Hinata joined him moments later, her Byakugan already active. Northwest edge of the village, she whispered. Single individual, chakra signature masked but definitely trained, likely Jonin level or higher. Sakura appeared silently behind them. Scouts or advance party? Hard to say, Naruto replied, his senses still focused on the disturbance. But they're being very cautious, which suggests they know we're aware of them. A decision needed to be made. Wait for the unknown observer to make a move, or take proactive action to identify them. After a brief silent exchange of glances, they opted for the latter. I'll approach from the east, Naruto said. Hinata, maintain visual coverage from here. Sakura, stay with the researchers in case this is a diversion. With nods of agreement, they split up. Naruto moved swiftly but silently through the sleeping village, using the shadows and his enhanced sensing abilities to avoid detection. He circled wide around the observer's position, intending to come up behind them while they focused on the inn. As he neared the village boundary, he detected a subtle shift in the disturbance. The observer was moving, having perhaps sensed his approach despite his precautions. Naruto accelerated, extending spiral-patterned chakra threads ahead of him to better track the retreating presence. The threads connected with something, or someone, for just an instant before being deflected by what felt like a counterclockwise spiral pattern. Kazama's technique, Naruto thought with alarm. But that's impossible. He died in the shrine. Yet the sensation was unmistakably similar, chakra spiraling in the opposite direction to his own, creating a natural opposition that disrupted his sensing ability. It lasted only a moment before the observer broke contact completely, their presence vanishing from his awareness with a skill that spoke of high-level training in concealment techniques. Naruto pursued for another half-mile beyond the village before accepting that the trail had gone cold. Whoever had been watching them was gone, leaving behind only that brief, troubling hint of reversed spiral chakra. When he returned to the inn, Hinata confirmed what he had sensed. They disappeared completely from my Byakugan range, she reported. But for a moment, I saw their chakra, red-tinged, with counterclockwise rotation patterns. Like Kazama, Naruto said grimly. But he couldn't have survived the shrine collapse. An associate, perhaps, Sakura suggested. Someone he trained or shared his techniques with. Quote, or a cipher organization operative who's adapted similar methods, Hinata added. If they're hunting bloodlines, they might have developed techniques specifically to counter different chakra types. Quote, whatever the explanation, the encounter confirmed their suspicions. They were being watched, possibly followed, by someone with specific interest in Uzumaki chakra patterns. The mission had just become considerably more complicated. We should accelerate our timeline, Naruto decided. Push to reach the Central Valley sooner than planned. If someone's following the same trail we are, I'd rather get to the destination first. The others agreed, and they spent the remainder of the night planning how to adjust their pace without alarming the researchers or making them suspicious about the ninja team's true objectives. Morning brought a light rain that dampened the landscape but not their resolve. Naruto approached Drive, Sato with a carefully constructed suggestion. Our intelligence indicates possible bandit activity along the standard route, he explained. I'd like to propose an alternative path, slightly more challenging terrain, but it would get us to the Central Valley a day earlier and avoid potential security risks. The lead researcher considered this briefly before nodding. If you believe it's safer, we'll defer to your expertise. Our equipment can handle rougher conditions if necessary. With the researchers' agreement secured, they set out on Naruto's proposed route, one that would follow the Uzumaki waymarkers more directly, cutting across the intervening valleys rather than circling around them as the traditional path did. The journey became more strenuous as the day progressed, with narrow mountain passes and dense forest sections slowing their civilian companions despite the ninjas' assistance with the heavier equipment. But by evening, they had made significant progress, cutting nearly half a day from their original timeline. They made camp in a sheltered ravine, the researchers too exhausted for their usual evening measurements. As they settled in for the night, Naruto felt the warm pulse in his chest growing stronger. They were getting closer to whatever had activated the Waymarker network. During his watch shift, he attempted to connect more deeply with this sensation, closing his eyes and focusing on the pull. Say as if it were a distant heartbeat calling to his own. The meditation technique, one he had learned from Mito's scroll, allowed him to extend his awareness beyond normal sensory range, seeking resonances with his awakened bloodline. What he found was both encouraging and concerning. The facility in the Central Valley was indeed of Uzumaki origin, and it contained something of great significance, something that pulsed with the same rhythm as the warm spot in his chest. But he also sensed other presences converging on the location, at least 3 distinct chakra signatures, all moving with purpose toward the same destination. The cipher organization had arrived ahead of them. Naruto opened his eyes, the realization sending a jolt of urgency through him. They needed to reach the facility immediately, before these unknown operatives could secure whatever Uzumaki legacy lay within. He woke his teammates, quickly sharing what he had sensed. We can't wait until morning, he concluded. The researchers will slow us down, and we can't explain the real situation to them without compromising classified information. We can't just abandon them either, Sakura pointed out. That would violate our mission parameters. What if we split up? Hinata suggested. 2 of us proceed immediately to secure the facility, while 1 remains with the research team to ensure their safety. It was the most logical solution, though not without risks. After brief discussion, they decided that Naruto and Hinata would advance to the facility while Sakura remained with the researchers. Naruto's connection to the Uzumaki legacy and Hinata's Byakugan made them the optimal pair for investigating and potentially securing the unknown installation. We'll proceed with the original timeline, Sakura assured them. Arriving the day after tomorrow as planned. That gives you roughly 36 hours to assess the situation before we join you. With the plan set, Naruto and Hinata prepared for immediate departure. They traveled light, carrying only essential equipment and supplies for a 2-day operation. Before leaving, Naruto created a shadow clone to remain with Sakura, both as backup and as a communica. Link should anything unexpected occur. Under the cover of darkness, they set out, moving at the full speed only trained shinobi could maintain across difficult terrain. The rain had stopped, but moisture still clung to every surface, making the mountain paths treacherous. They compensated with chakra-enhanced movements, using trees and rock faces as launching points to maintain momentum. Naruto led the way, following the ever-strengthening pulse in his chest like a compass pointing true north. Occasionally they would pass one of the waymarkers, ancient stones now glowing faintly with activated chakra. Visible to his enhanced senses even in the darkness. They traveled through the night and into the dawn, pausing only briefly for water and soldier pills to maintain their energy. By mid-morning, they had crossed the second valley and were approaching the ridge that separated it from their destination. As they crested the ridge, the central valley spread out below them, a narrow, winding G formation with steep sides and a flat bottom through which a small river meandered. Even from this distance, Naruto could see unusual features in the landscape, geometric patterns in the vegetation, too regular to be natural, and stone formations that aligned too perfectly with cardinal directions. The whole valley is artificial, Hinata breathed, her Byakugan active as she surveyed the scene. Or at least heavily modified. The underlying rock has been shaped and repositioned to create specific chakra flow patterns. Like a giant seal array, Naruto realized. The entire valley is one massive Uzumaki construct. They descended cautiously, alert for signs of the cipher operatives Naruto had sensed. The valley floor was eerily quiet. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, as if the local wildly Fae instinctively avoided the unnatural chakra patterns permeating the area. The warm pulse in Naruto's chest had become a steady, powerful throb by the time they reached the valley floor. He paused, orienting himself, then pointed to a sheer cliff face on the northern side. There, he said with certainty. The entrance is concealed in that rock face. They approached carefully, using natural cover whenever possible. Hinata's Byakugan scanned continuously for threats, but so far, there was no sign of the cipher operatives Naruto had sensed the previous night. The cliff appeared solid and unremarkable as they drew near. No visible entrance, no obvious seams or mechanisms. But when Naruto extended his awareness, he could feel the spiraling chakra pathways that converged just behind the seemingly solid rock. It's here, he confirmed, placing his hand against the cool stone surface. But concealed by some kind of genjutsu or sealing technique. Hinata studied the cliff with her Byakugan. Quote, I can see chakra pathways beyond the rock, but the entrance mechanism is complex, multiple layered seals, probably requiring specific activation sequences. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the connection between the warm pulse in his chest and the energies behind the rock face. As he had done with the waymarkers, he allowed his awakened chakra to resonate with the ancient Uzumaki constructs, eking the pattern that would grant them access. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, just as he was about to try a different approach, he felt something click into place, not physically, but in the chakra network surrounding them. The rock face before him began to shimmer like a heat mirage, its solidity dissolving to reveal an ornate doorway carved with intricate spiral patterns. You did it, Hinata whispered, deactivating her Byakugan as the genjutsu concealment fell away completely. The revealed entrance was impressive, 15 feet tall and 10 feet wide, with massive stone doors covered in seal arrays and spiral motifs. At the center of each door was an indentation in the shape of a hand, clearly meant for some kind of chakra-based authentication. Stay alert, Naruto cautioned as he approached the doors. If the cipher organization is already inside, they might have set traps for followers. Hinata reactivated her Byakugan, scanning beyond the entrance. I don't see any immediate threats. But the interior extends deep into the mountain with multiple chambers. My vision is partially blocked by seal barriers in the deeper sections. With a deep breath, Naruto placed his hand in the left door's indentation, channeling his awakened chakra into the ancient mechanism. The response was immediate. Spiral patterns across both doors illuminated with blue light, spreading out from his hand like ripples in a pond. The massive doors swung inward silently, revealing a long corridor that sloped gently downward into the mountain. Softly glowing panels in the ceiling activated as the doors opened, providing illumination that grew brighter as they stepped inside. It's responding to your presence, Hinata observed, recognizing your chakra signature as authorized. The air inside was surprisingly fresh, suggesting some kind of ventilation system had remained functional over the decades or centuries since the facility was last used. The corridor walls were lined with the same spiral patterns as the doors. Though here they remained dormant, their potential energy waiting to be awakened. They proceeded cautiously, Naruto extending chakra threads ahead to detect any Wraps are security measures while Hinata maintained vigilant visual scanning with her Byakugan. The corridor continued for nearly 100 yards before opening into a large circular chamber with multiple doorways leading off in different directions. In the center of this chamber stood a pedestal similar to the one they had seen in the underwater shrine, though instead of a crystal sphere, this one held a complex three-dimensional seal array suspended in midair, a construct of pure chakra maintained by the facility's systems. A nexus point, Naruto realized, recognizing the pattern from Mito's scrolls. It's a control hub for the entire facility. As they approached the pedestal, the suspended seal array began to rotate, its spiral components adjusting and realigning in response to Naruto's chakra signature. Symbols and diagrams appeared within its structure, forming what appeared to be a map or directory of the facility. "It's showing us the layout," Hinata said, studying the projection. "Look. These must be different sections or departments. Research areas, living quarters, storage vaults." Naruto focused on one section that pulsed more strongly than the others, a large chamber deep within the mountain. Marked with a symbol he recognized from his studies, the Uzumaki clan's secret designation for advanced sealing archives. "That's what activated the waymarkers," he said, pointing to the pulsing section. "Some kind of archive or repository. And that," he indicated another area showing signs of recent activity, "is where the intruders are." The projection confirmed his suspicion, displaying disturbances in the facility's chakra network centered around an area labeled as Bloodline Analysis Laboratory. The Cypher operatives had found their way in somehow and were current. Lee focused on that section, still some distance from the main archive that seemed to be calling to Naruto. "We have two objectives now," he said grimly. "Secure whatever is in that archive before they realize its significance. And then deal with the intruders directly." Hinata nodded, her expression determined. "The archive first. If it contains what I think it does, records of Uzumaki bloodline tech. Neeks, we can't risk the Cypher organization getting access to it." With the facility map committed to memory, they chose the corridor that would lead most directly to the archive chamber. As they moved deeper into the mountain complex, the dormant spiral patterns on the walls began to activate in their wake, responding to Naruto's passage like flowers turning toward the sun. The warm pulse in his chest grew stronger with every step, resonating with the ancient Uzumaki constructs surrounding them. Whatever awaited in the archive, it was calling to his blood with increasing urgency, a legacy long dormant, finally sensing the return of one who could claim it. Chapter 2 End.